Chapter 466. Breaking through to the late stage of the Luotian Freedom Immortal Realm. 20 million years per tribulation crossing. That meant Guan's investment of 100 million years of lifespan could only sustain 5 tribulations. Almost without any suspense, they ended in failure. He still had 4 billion years of lifespan left. Could he cross tribulation 200 times at most? This time, he must reserve at least 500 million years for the lifespan barrier, to avoid any mishap. Guan took a deep breath and continued investing lifespan, still in increments of 100 million years each. Above him the Tao spiritual energy surged like fog, as if the sky was churning, oppressive and spectacular. Great figures flitted by, visible one moment and gone the next. Guan didn't look up, focused on the investment of his lifespan. 100 million followed by another 100 million. Soon 10 billion years of lifespan disappeared, and Guan's complexion turned grim. Continue. Still in units of 100 million years, he kept investing. Guan's mood was relatively steady. As long as he could break through successfully, what did it matter if he only had 100 years of lifespan left? He could quickly accumulate lifespan. In the end, another 10 billion years were spent. Guan, seeing that he only had 21 billion years of lifespan left, felt some trepidation. Was he constantly reincarnating during the 20 million years following a failed Songshuan Tao tribulation crossing? Engrossed in his chaotic thoughts, Guan continued to invest 100 million years of lifespan. 100 million followed by another 100 million years. Guan's lifespan quickly dwindled to 11 billion years. He decided that if he still hadn't achieved breakthrough success by 500 million years, he would give up trying to break through. Having thought this, he once again invested 100 million years. The prompt length changed. You have practiced Qi absorption cultivation for 60 million years. You forcefully attempted to break into the early Luotian Freedom Immortal Realm with the help of the Tao Great Freedom Wishing Scripture, beginning your tribulation. You endured the Songshuan Tao reincarnation tribulation and successfully crossed the tribulation, your cultivation level breaking through to the early Luotian Freedom Immortal Realm. You have practiced Qi absorption cultivation for 100 million years. Your cultivation level has improved. 10 billion years of lifespan remaining. Continue to ascend. Guan invested another 200 million plus years of lifespan, finally advancing his cultivation level to the middle stage of the Luotian Freedom Immortal Realm. He suddenly felt uneasy, fearing that this time, he might be unable to reach the perfect realm in one go. No matter, it would be good enough to reach the late stage. The middle stage didn't sound strong enough. Eventually, Guan invested over 300 million years of lifespan and successfully reached the late stage of the Luotian Freedom Immortal Realm. He had a bit over 480 million years of lifespan remaining, and the lifespan barrier had already started extracting Tao spiritual energy. The disturbance this time would surpass all before. Guan only hoped not to alarm the Heavenly Spirit God. He didn't want to encounter the Heavenly Spirit God at this moment. He felt that even the true form of the Silent Annihilation Divine Emperor was not as strong as the Heavenly Spirit God otherwise. The Silent Annihilation Divine Emperor in his true form would have sought him out for trouble long before. Without absolute confidence, Guan wouldn't recklessly clash with the Heavenly Spirit God. Even if the cosmos where the great Heavenly Spirit Land was located was a prison, as long as he could continue seizing lifespan, even if he always stayed within the great Heavenly Spirit Land, he wouldn't find it dull. Guan watched the lifespan barrier, ensuring the speed of lifespan consumption wouldn't threaten his life. After which, he relaxed and started to carefully sense the fortunes of his own body. From Shenyuan to Luotian, there must be extraordinary aspects. As Guan began his attempt to break into the realm of the Luotian Freedom Immortal, Tao spiritual energy was extracted from various places across the universe, with no traceable origin. Around the bounds of the great Heavenly Spirit Land, the void churned up a Tao storm, howling ceaselessly and terrifying, causing those strong presences atop the heavenly Tao light layer to become incredibly nervous. The disturbances in the universe grew larger and larger, and while there wasn't the terrifying pressure of the Silent Annihilation Divine Emperor, the abnormalities in the universe's laws and spiritual energy were more unsettling, leading people to worry whether the universe was on the verge of collapse. Some speculated that it was the immense strength of Sword Venerable Fudao, and that mysterious being that made the universe unable to withstand. However, no one dared to blame Sword Venerable Fudao, for without him, that mysterious being would have the power to annihilate the great Heavenly Spirit Land. Time continued to elapse. While all beings were restless and uneasy, Guan was immersed in the fortunes of his being. Within the great heaven and earth, mortal spirits were unaware of the disturbances beyond the sky. With the retreat of the heavenly demons, a sense of renewal and jubilation spread across the land. Those mortal spirits who survived the great calamity expressed their gratitude toward Sword Venerable Fudao, and some had even begun preparations to erect monuments in his honor. Within the Third Medicine Valley, Ju Luo Sword Monarch sat meditating atop a cliff, gazing up at the sky with a deeply furrowed brow. The location was very close to 10,000 Sword Mountain, and he had intended to meditate and gain enlightenment there. However, the increasingly frequent disturbances from beyond the sky made it impossible for him to calm his mind. What will happen next? Ju Luo Sword Monarch wondered with confusion. Even beings like the Annihilation God Emperor had been destroyed, and he had thought there would be a period of calm. Unexpectedly, new changes had arisen so soon. He couldn't help but feel that the great heavenly spirit land was a place of constant disaster and turmoil. On second thought, he found it normal, considering it was the great heavenly spirit land, the center of the universe. Although it might not be the strongest land, its past made it clear that it would never be ordinary. After the battle had ended the day before, many people had arrived at the Third Medicine Valley, all wishing to visit Sword Venerable Fudao. LV Batian had specifically ordered the cultivators from the LV and G families to guard the surroundings of Medicine Valley to prevent Guan from being disturbed. Yilan and Zhen Qin, who had come to visit, were also stopped. Sword Venerable Fudao is my master. How dare you block my way? Zhen Qin exclaimed with wide eyes, annoyed. The middle-aged cultivator who had stopped her paled, saying solemnly, "Do not spout nonsense." After speaking, he instinctively glanced around, clearly wary of something. At that moment, a figure clad in tight black clothes and wearing a theatrical mask appeared out of thin air. Upon seeing him, the expression of the middle-aged cultivator became even more unnatural. Immediately afterward, as if hearing something, the middle-aged cultivator bowed to Yilan and Zhen Qin, saying, "My apologies, I was blind to the truth. I am simply following orders. Please come in." Zhen Qin gave a glance at the figure in black and couldn't help but pout before pulling Yilan into the Third Medicine Valley. The figure in black vanished from the spot, and the nearby LV family cultivators crowded around the middle-aged cultivator, curious to know if the two women indeed were the disciples of Sword Venerable Fudao. The middle-aged cultivator took a deep breath and nodded slowly. This caused the others to turn and observe the retreating figures of Yilan and Zhen Qin, memorizing their faces so as not to act inappropriately if they met them again. After entering Medicine Valley, Yilan realized there were more people than the last time she visited, and many of them had cultivation levels she couldn't fathom. "Junior aunt, senior sister, you're here," an Exine walked quickly toward them, greeting them warmly. Seeing Yilan, both ladies also smiled. Zhen Qin went up to join her, linking arms with an Exine, and the two women immediately began chattering away. After a while, seizing a moment, Yilan asked, "Isn't senior brother here?" An Exine nodded and said, "He left early this morning, but he always returns quickly after leaving. Shall I show you where to stay first?" Yilan had no objections. Now that she knew Guan was Sword Venerable Fudao, she was even less worried that he would be away for long. The three women walked toward a cluster of attics, and Yilan suddenly asked, "An Exine, did you know about your true identity a long time ago?" Zhen Qin followed suit, turning her gaze to an Exine. An Exine let out a bitter smile. "How could I? I only found out yesterday as well." Upon hearing this, Yilan's face broke into a smile, and Zhen Qin followed, complaining about how well their master had kept the secret from her. With a sense of self-congratulation for having dodged the bullet, an Exine thought to herself, "Master, I have learned a tenth of your ways." She was no fool. Yilan was clearly probing her, and she didn't want to start a conflict with her future mother-in-law. Although Yilan and Guan were simply fellow disciples at this point, in Nzin's eyes, the two were no different from Taoist partners. The three women began to recall the past, marveling that Guan had kept such a deep secret. Zhen Qin was curious. Guan had come to the Supreme Sect at a very young age, having been born into the Ji family. Had he disguised himself as an infant? An Exine brought up the topic of reincarnation tribulation, saying she had heard from a senior that once one's realm reached a certain level, they could enter reincarnation and be reborn, yet still be able to wield the power of their past life, which enlightened the two women. They began to discuss the concept of reincarnation tribulation. Elsewhere, Long Qing approached Blood Prison Great Saint, who had transformed into human shape. After transforming, Blood Prison Great Saint had not secluded himself in a room. Instead, he continued his vigilant watch at the foot of Guan's building. At that moment, Blood Prison Great Saint was practicing a certain divine skill, his palms concentrating blood chi. Combined with his white hair and horns, he looked fierce and sinister. "Brother Nyo, how about a match?" Long Qing chuckled. Now that the heavenly demons had started to disperse, the strange feelings that had plagued his heart had vanished, and he was free to live his life. Blood Prison Great Saint opened an eye, ready to refuse, when suddenly he saw something which made a proud smile spread across his face. "You want to challenge me? You might as well challenge your senior brother first." "My senior brother?" Long Qing was surprised and instinctively turned, following Blood Prison Great Saint's gaze toward the entrance of Medicine Valley. There he saw a figure approaching, a handsome man dressed in silver chainmail and a white robe, whose sharp aura could not be concealed. Chapter 467. Luo Tian representing heaven. Yang Jian walked along the mountain path of the third Medicine Valley, looking at the bustling Medicine Valley, his heart filled with emotion. Years had passed, and truly, things were no longer the same. After walking a distance, Yang Jian didn't come across anyone familiar. He did not use his divine sense. Returning to this place, he didn't want to be too intrusive. "Yang Jian, senior brother?" A voice filled with surprise reached his ears, prompting Yang Jian to turn and look. He saw a female cultivator approaching, her features pleasing and appearing to be in her 30s. Her eyes shone with surprise as she looked at him, even mixed with tears. Yang Jian looked at her, finding her somewhat familiar, yet he couldn't recall who she actually was. Countless years are so long, to say nothing of his journey into the reincarnation vortex, experiencing many lives. In his eyes, the time that had passed was far more than just a few hundred years. Yang Jian watched the female cultivator come before him, her joyous eyes making him feel compassion. After some thought he asked, "Are you well?" The fact that she could call out his name meant she certainly knew him. Unable to explain the intricacies of reincarnation, it wasn't kind to say he had forgotten her. The female cultivator became even more excited, starting to recount her life after Yang Jian had left. From her words, Yang Jian learned her identity and the changes in the Third Medicine Valley and the whole world after his departure. When he learned about Guan's cultivation being revealed, he wasn't surprised, as he had already heard about the recent events on his way here. This return also involved the arrangement of the Holy Court. He was originally back to join the war effort, but now he was sent to find Guan, and it was the Holy Minister who personally brought him here. At that moment, the Holy Minister was in the Outer Gate City, feeling the sword intent on the heavenly repair platform. So many years had passed, not many people in the Third Medicine Valley knew of Yang Jian, but his name had always been circulated. The female cultivator was no longer a disciple of the Medicine Valley. Today, she had come back to visit her juniors, and upon seeing Yang Jian, she was beyond excited. She introduced Yang Jian to everyone she met. Those who had heard his name were surprised, and those who hadn't showed warmth after learning he was Guan's disciple. This eased Yang Jian's nervousness significantly. Carrying the mission of the Holy Court made him feel uncomfortable, but the Holy Minister had not required him to do anything outrageous, just to ask Guan for his opinions on the future of the world. Meanwhile, another person had arrived. Zhang Xianwang from the Immortal Dynasty. He had initially represented the Immortal Dynasty to win over the sword Venerable Fudao and had met Guan during this process. Many years had gone by, and he had almost forgotten Guan until the Yangxian Emperor summoned him and said that Guan was indeed the sword Venerable Fudao, even personally bringing him to the Third Medicine Valley. It wasn't until he stepped into the Third Medicine Valley that he, too, was stupefied. The vague memory of Guan became clear in his mind. When he recalled their past interactions, he found mysteries at every turn. Guan's sunny smile seemed loaded with deeper meaning, leaving him feeling uneasy, unsure of how to face Guan. His steps slowed. Suddenly, he was afraid to confront Guan. What would he say to the one who had salvaged the entire great heavenly spirit land? What could he say? Zhang Xianwang was in turmoil, almost in a daze. Nobody greeted him along the way. It wasn't that the people of the Third Medicine Valley had become arrogant, but they had just experienced a huge battle the day before. Everyone was still excited and emotional, which couldn't settle down, plus Yang Jian was attracting a lot of attention. Suddenly, slap! A hand landed on Zhang Xianwang's shoulder, frightening the carefree primordial immortal so much that his 3 souls and 7 spirits nearly flew out. He instinctively turned around, and then, as if struck by lightning, he froze. "Brother Zhang, it's been a long time," Guan said with a smile on his face. He had just made a breakthrough and was in a good mood. He was now in the later stages of the Luo Tian Freedom Immortal Realm. He still had over 31 million years of life left. How could he not be happy? Beneath the happiness, he also felt some emotion. Just breaking through in cultivation level cost him 450 million years of his lifespan. The next time he broke through a great realm, he would need to prepare 10 billion years of life and could unlock new abilities. As Guan pondered these thoughts, he asked with a smile, "Brother Zhang, what's wrong? Don't remember me?" He could see through Zhang Xianwang's purpose at a glance, and he could see all of the carefree primordial immortal's fate, even hearing Zhang Xianwang's inner voice. This was the power of a Luo Tian free immortal, able to merge into the heaven and earth rules, integrating will with heaven and earth, and thus knowing everything within heaven and earth. In a sense, Guan could become the sky of the great heavenly spirit land. Zhang Xianwang came back to his senses, answering in a fluster, "How could I forget you? No, forget you." "Huh? What's the matter? Don't consider me a friend. What's all this you? I don't like to hear it," Guan said with a stern eye. He wasn't pretending on purpose. Had always had a good impression of Zhang Xianwang. When they first met, Zhang Xianwang didn't know his cultivation realm. For the carefree primordial immortal to be so high above and still be friendly with cultivators from the mortal realm proved that Zhang Xianwang wasn't as arrogant as most in the immortal path. Even now, as the Luo Tian Zizai immortal, Guan still liked the life of ordinary people. He didn't want to become an aloof and indifferent god. He wanted to continue being human. Of course, these were his current thoughts. He couldn't say if they would change in the future, but he hoped to live his life freely. Zhang Xianwang suddenly didn't know how to respond. Guan grabbed his arm and started pulling him towards his attic. Zhang Xianwang dared not resist, but he was very pleasantly surprised. Guan's attitude relieved much of his pressure. He looked at Guan's profile and thought him truly remarkable. Possessing cultivation far exceeding that of His Majesty, yet he could lower his stature to befriend and discuss the Tao with those of lower realms. It seemed to Zhang Xianwang that what Guan said to that mysterious being was true. He really possessed a heart that understood all beings. Suddenly, Medicine Valley erupted in thunderous cheers, for someone had spotted Guan's return. The disciples surged towards him like a tide. Quite presumptuous. That's what Zhang Xianwang thought. He guessed Guan would scold the disciples for their lack of manners. However, what happened next astounded him. Guan didn't scold them. Instead, he greeted them with a smile. As they were surrounded by the disciples, he greeted each one, answering their inquiries. Looking at the smile on Guan's face, Zhang Xianwang felt he was just a common man, yet there was something about him that was admirable. True strength wasn't about domination. It was the ability to embrace everything. Zhang Xianwang suddenly felt this trip hadn't been a waste. Although he hadn't yet ascertained Guan's views on the world, he had already gained something. He had never been an arrogant person. It was the honor of the immortal dynasty that compelled him, often forcing him to adopt a haughty attitude. "Master!" Yang Jian squeezed through the crowd, looking at Guan with excitement. Guan smiled and said, "Jenner, it's been a long time. Come to my house and let's talk." Upon hearing this, Yang Jian was even happier, as all his worries melted away. So Guan, along with Zhang Xianwang and Yang Jian, moved forward, greeting the disciples and friends along the way. Not only Zhang Xianwang was moved by Guan's style, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch was too. He couldn't understand why Guan got along so well with these mortals, nor could he comprehend why these mortals lacked a sense of awe towards Guan, master. Zhan Qin's voice suddenly came from behind the crowd. Guan, surrounded by all like the moon by stars, smiled at her and Yilan, then pointed to his attic and said, "Let's talk in my house." Yilan looked at Guan like this, her face brimming with a smile. The senior brother was still the same senior brother. No matter how powerful, he was always so kind. It took a while before the 5 of them got back to the house. Guan had them sit down and then asked Zhan Qin to pour tea. Although Zhan Qin had long left Medicine Valley, she was not angry but happy to be given a task by Guan. The master still considered her one of his own. Guan first made small talk with Zhang Xianwang, while also introducing Yilan and Yang Jian to him. Upon learning that this person came from the immortal dynasty, Yilan was surprised but quickly accepted it. Who in the whole world wouldn't want to make acquaintance with her senior brother now? But when Yilan learned that Yang Jian was actually the reincarnation of a holy king of the holy dynasty, she was a bit astonished. At the same time, she became more convinced that Guan was the reincarnation of a great power. Her childhood memories were not false. Zhang Xianwang, however, was not surprised. He could sense the chief fortune of the holy court on Yang Jian and even the aura of an old acquaintance. Had he already left? Zhang Xianwang thought of heaven sect with a touch of regret. But he had already been tempered by the years and would not be saddened by this. I am aware of your purpose, Guan suddenly said, his smile gone from his face. In that moment, Zhang Xianwang and Yang Jian felt immense pressure. It was as if they were facing the heavenly Tao. Chapter 468. Facing the heavenly Tao. Guan finished speaking, and his gaze began to sweep over Yang Jian and Zhang Xianwang, causing the atmosphere in the room to drop to a freezing point. Just having taken a seat, Zhen Qin was also stunned silent, not daring to breathe too loudly. Now, she truly believed that her master was Sword Venerable Fu Dao. This aura was too terrifying. It was also the first time Yang Jian had felt his master display such an aura, and even though he had regained his memories from his previous life and possessed a wealth of experiences, he still felt a chill in the face of Guan's aura, feeling as though even the mana in his body had solidified. The nervousness that Zhang Xianwang had felt earlier surged back, and his entire body stiffened. Yilan, on the other hand, wasn't nervous. She felt in the depths of her heart that Guan would never hurt her. Taoist friend from before, you speak. Facing the pressure from Guan, Zhang Xianwang gritted his teeth and asked. Guan replied expressionlessly, I don't intervene in the conflicts of the great heaven and earth, but do not provoke me, and do not involve the mortal spirits. Immortals are different from mortals, not in terms of status, but because the gap in power requires a safe distance to be maintained. After hearing this, Yang Jian and Zhang Xianwang immediately nodded in agreement. Guan then revealed a smile, the terrifying pressure completely disappearing, leaving Yang Jian, Zhang Xianwang, and Zhen Qin somewhat in a daze. All right, I've said what you wanted to ask. Now we should talk about something cheerful. How have you all been these years, Jenner? You go first. Guan looked towards Yang Jian with a smile and asked. Yang Jian came back to his senses and immediately began recounting his experiences. Even with Zhang Xianwang beside him, he did not hold back. Zhang Xianwang was very interested in his experiences. Yilan and Zhen Qin, upon hearing that Yang Jian had entered reincarnation, became interested. Unlike the three individuals from Medicine Valley, the two of them were at the mortal spirit realm. Even in their subsect where they held authority, they were still at the bottom of the immortal cultivation world and could not touch upon the matters of reincarnation. They had been to the mortal world to deliver wild ghosts to salvation, but they could not fathom how ghosts reincarnated. Guan also listened attentively, occasionally asking for details, and the atmosphere was very harmonious. Meanwhile, the anomalies outside outer heaven finally began to slow down, and the creatures of the silent destruction domain remained anxious. There had been pauses before, but soon after, the Tao spiritual energy would violently stir once more, so they did not dare to believe this peace would be the last. Time swiftly passed. Until dusk, Guan asked an Xian to settle Zhen Qin, Yang Jian, and Zhang Xianwang, while he spent time alone with Yilan. Guan looked at Yilan and said, Ask what you want to ask. He had previously concealed his identity as Sword Venerable Fu Dao, and he could hear Yilan's thoughts, so he encouraged her to speak her mind. Indeed, Yilan had many questions, but seeing that Guan had kept her alone, willing to explain, her grievances melted away like mist before the sun. Who Guan was? Did it really matter? What was important should be that Guan, no matter his identity, was protecting her. Furthermore, seeing the commotion outside, Yilan understood why the identity of Sword Venerable Fu Dao had to remain a secret. Yilan smiled brightly and said, How does it feel to be so admired? Guan heard her question and knew she bore no grudge. Her junior sister was always so understanding. Guan shook his head with a smile and said, It's all empty fame. In this world, a name might live longer than the person, but it cannot withstand the passage of time. But that's for ordinary people. With elder brother's prowess, people will surely talk about you forever. Yilan spoke earnestly. Throughout history, how many had the power to save the world? As far as she knew, there was no one better, more accomplished than her elder brother. Guan smiled helplessly and then picked up the teapot to pour some tea for Yilan. Yilan read his expression and thought about Guan's previous conversation with the Annihilation God Emperor, so she couldn't help asking, could a world like ours really be destroyed? Guan nodded and said, it was destroyed once long ago. The current great heaven and earth is but a fragment of what once was, and there are many great heaven and earths beyond our sky. Perhaps there are even multiple universes out there. There might be many, many universes. Even I feel very small in comparison. Hearing this, Yilan's imagination took flight and she exclaimed earnestly, there are people beyond our people, and skies beyond our sky. I really want to see what lies beyond outer heaven, but alas, I am not qualified. Guan looked at her and said, if you wish to go, I can take you. Yilan was somewhat tempted, but she still shook her head and said, let's not, I am afraid that seeing it will only make me more discontent. She then looked steadily at Guan and asked, elder brother, is there truly a chance in reincarnation? Will the me in my next life still be me? She had become intrigued by reincarnation after hearing Yang Jian's experiences. Moreover, the primordial reincarnation skill could accumulate cultivation level across reincarnations. Previously, she did not believe in it, but now she thought that perhaps embarking towards death was the beginning of innate reincarnation. Hearing her thoughts, Guan answered, of course there is. The path of immortal cultivation is to explore the path of Tao, and reincarnation is also a form of Tao. If you can recover your memories in your next life, then you are still you. But even if memories are not recovered, you are still you. Your soul has not changed. Reincarnation might erase memories, but it can't alter your nature, nor can it change the deep-seated desires that burst forth from your heart. He had always felt that one's nature was determined by the heavens, that it's the experiences of life that suppress nature and shape principles, thereby forming a new person. Like in his previous life, he understood many truths, but he found it hard to control his own will and desires. Even now, though he was strong, many thoughts sprouted in his mind, thoughts that sometimes conflicted with his understanding of the path. Cultivation is about cultivating the heart, for by cultivating the heart, one can control their nature. Yilan revealed a smile and said, I also want to reincarnate, and I don't know whether in the next life my senior brother will still find me. Up to now, she no longer doubted Guan's abilities. She believed that to Guan reincarnation was just an ordinary matter. Guan raised an eyebrow and said, of course I'll find you. I'll tie you to my side, trap you lifetime after lifetime. Are you afraid? That's great, I just fear you wouldn't want me anymore, Yilan pretended to be pitiful. Guan laughed and said, I'm just afraid the subconscious you will be rebellious, don't treat me like an enemy then. Yilan looked steadily at Guan and said, that's impossible. Whether or not I have memories, as long as I see you, I will trust you completely. Even though I have never been through reincarnation, I firmly believe this. Guan and her locked eyes, listening to the voice of her heart, and the room fell quiet alongside them. Senior brother, what does it feel like to guard alone, to watch old acquaintances constantly reincarnate? Yilan continued to ask. She was certain that Guan had lived for countless years. She couldn't even tell if her past life was closely related to Guan, which is why he took such good care of her. Guan looked out the window and said, you see the leaves falling from that tree, and new shoots growing, what do you feel? Yilan followed his gaze and looked outside the window, her thoughts drifting. Guan's Taoist intent enveloped her, helping her to comprehend the natural ways of heaven and earth. Both watched out the window, lost in thought. Before Guan's eyes, all the past resurfaced. When he had nothing else to do, he would recall the past, including his experiences on Earth from his former life, remembering always where he came from, and for what he pursued immortal cultivation. As Guan's thoughts drifted, a breeze rose outside the window, stirring the old tree beside the attic. Just as he said, some leaves were blown away. That leaf seemed unwilling to hit the ground, fluttering and struggling in the wind, rising and falling with it. It flew across the scarlet sky, entering a blue sky dotted with white clouds, then gently landed in the palm of Guan's hand. This landing marked several centuries of time. Dressed in white, Guan stood in front of a tombstone, gazing at the leaf in his hand with deep eyes. Beside him, a hand reached out, trying to grab the leaf in his palm, but passed right through it. Is this what it feels like to be dead? It's quite strange. Yilan's soul stood next to Guan, excitedly speaking. Guan glanced at her helplessly saying, "You're about to reincarnate, and still you're this happy?" Yilan said proudly, "Naturally I'm happy, I get to start my life over, and I have no regrets from these 400 years. 420 years had passed since Guan broke through to the Luotian Freedom Immortal Realm. Since their talk 400 years ago, Yilan had been eager to reincarnate early, feeling she had no hope for pursuing the Tao in this life. But Guan had her wait, and during these 420 years, she resigned from her position as an elder of a subsect and stayed in the Third Medicine Valley, receiving Guan's guidance in cultivation. In Guan's words, accumulating an understanding of the heaven and earth rules before reincarnation would make cultivation easier in the next life. Hearing her words, a smile appeared on Guan's face. He tossed the leaf from his hand and raised his hand to touch Yilan's face. Yilan did not dodge, but when Guan's hand touched her cheek, she couldn't help but widen her eyes in astonishment. Then she understood. Her senior brother was so powerful, crossing the barrier between yin and yang was not difficult. Guan touched her face, thinking of the girl that always clung to him in the past. Unbeknownst to him, she had accompanied him for more than 1,500 years. Guan said with a smile, "Are you ready?" Yilan nodded and took a deep breath. Guan withdrew his hand, then waved his sleeve, and an irresistible force swept up Yilan's soul, sending her flying toward the sky. Yilan watched Guan on the ground getting further and further away, her excitement fading, replaced by a fear of the unknown. What if in the next life, senior brother couldn't find her, or forgot about her? Her heart ached, only then realizing that no matter how open-minded or well-prepared one was, experiencing life and death personally was completely different. "Don't worry, even if this world perishes, I will still be here. As long as I am, even if the seas dry and stones decay, as long as you are willing to stay by my side, I will come find you." Guan's gentle voice entered Yilan's ears, immediately settling her heart. Yes, if senior brother wanted to abandon her, he could have long ago. What point would there be in deceiving her? She opened her mouth, wanting to talk to Guan, but found herself unable to make any sound. Guan, seeing Yilan in the sky, could hear her heart's voice. He didn't continue the conversation. His gaze shifted toward the outer heaven. That layer of light symbolized the power of heaven. He was curious if reincarnation had anything to do with heavenly Tao, who sat high above, decreeing the destinies for all things. He thought of the group of immortals he would eventually face. Perhaps the power behind heavenly Tao was such extraordinary immortals in control of everything. One day, he would confront these beings, face heavenly Tao. Chapter 469 Perfect Realm. Sword Tao Saint Ancestor Guan watched Yilan drift into the reincarnation vortex. His divine thought did not retract but instead followed all the way into the vortex, and only after Yilan was drawn into the great Tao by the reincarnation rules did he pull back his divine thought. He stood still, continuing to gaze at Yilan's steel. For a long while. An Exian came to his side and asked, "Master, are you all right?" Guan turned around, stretched lazily, and smiled. "I was just thinking about the past. Let's go. It's time to return to the valley." An Exian nodded, accompanying him toward the valley. "Master, I have already arranged for everything. In the future there will be female disciples guarding Uncle Master's steel daily." You are thoughtful. Make sure she is not mistreated." "Of course, she will not be mistreated. And by the way, Master, there is a rumor circulating outside that Shangtian is about to return and the immortal dynasty will be defeated. Is it true?" An Exian changed the topic, fearing that Guan would be saddened. Listening to her heartfelt words, Guan wanted to laugh. After all, it wasn't his first time dealing with separation and death, so how could he be sad? Moreover, he and Yilan were bound to meet sooner or later. Guan replied, "Shangtian will indeed return, but when exactly is hard to say. The reincarnation rules obscure cause and effect, and no one can see through it, but one thing is certain, there's still a long time until the immortal dynasty faces defeat." 420 years had passed, and there were no heavenly demons causing chaos in the mortal world. The Sky Demon Great Sect no longer existed, but the Xianyu Divine Dynasty was still around. However, the Xianyu Divine Dynasty had now submitted to the Immortal Dynasty, and the world had once again formed a situation where the Holy Court rivaled the Immortal Dynasty. During these years, Sword Venerable Fu Dao had not taken action again, and Guan's life was very peaceful. either teaching the disciples around him Taoist sorcery, or picking flowers and herbs. Now he was at the peak of his Luotian freedom immortal realm cultivation level, from advanced stage to perfection. He had spent nearly 5 billion years of his lifespan. His remaining lifespan was 37 billion years, and he was preparing to strive for a lifespan of 100 billion years. A long time until defeat? Does that not mean they are destined to lose? Should I warn my senior brother? And Xin hesitated. And Hao was serving the immortal dynasty, very gloriously, and from time to time, his sensational achievements would spread back to the supreme sect. Guan replied, he understands that, rather than being concerned about him, you should think about your own cultivation. It's time for you to advance to the Nirvana realm. Originally, Enzin's maximum lifespan had not been high, just like Yilan and Zhenqin, rather ordinary, but as her realm continuously improved, cultivating the same primordial reincarnation skill, the extreme lifespan brought about by her released cultivation level was increasing. Guan could not see through her talent either, but she was indeed improving. As long as she stepped into the Nirvana realm, she could break through her limits and not be suppressed by extreme lifespan for a long time. Now thinking about it, when Hao and Enzin's hometown was attacked by demons, and only the two of them survived, perhaps it wasn't just Hao's strong chi fortune. Enzin's chi fortune was also not simple. It's just that she had not revealed her talent as quickly as Hao. I have already been trying hard, but increasing cultivation in Mahayana realm, from the 8th to the 9th floor, is very difficult. Give me some more time. And Xin shook Guan's arm, coquettishly. Guan just tapped her lightly and did not scold her. Keep up your current endeavor. Perhaps you really could surpass Hauer and Jenner. Guan whispered softly, laughing, which immediately excited an Xin. With the master saying this, she really held hope of surpassing them. In fact, over these years, she had felt the changes in herself, and this transformation made her increasingly confident. Of course, she felt that all such transformations were gifts from her master. The master and disciple continued chatting this way as they headed back to the valley. None of the disciples dared to disturb Guan along the way, as they all knew of Yilan's death. 420 years had passed, and 7 to 8 out of 10 disciples in the valley had changed. The current disciples had initially entered the valley watching Yilan cultivate beside Guan, and in their hearts, Yilan was not just an uncle master but more like a mistress. When Guan passed by 10,000 Sword Mountain, he turned around and walked towards a figure at the foot of the mountain. Seeing this, an Xin did not follow but waited in place. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch stood in front of the stele, eyes closed, as if perceiving something. Guan came beside him and asked, "Did you feel it too?" Zhu Luo Sword Monarch opened his eyes and turned to pay his respects, his expression solemn. "I have seen that power before. They have invaded the universe many times." Guan looked up at the sky. "Do you think their arrival is related to that divine emperor?" Zhu Luo Sword Monarch frowned. He felt that Guan was testing him. With Guan's cultivation level, his understanding of the universe definitely surpassed his own. Having spent several hundred years in the Third Medicine Valley, he had gained deep insights and felt that the shackles of a higher realm were loosening. He credited this to Guan's dojo, so he pondered every word from Guan carefully. Perhaps, after all, your battle with him was too shocking. Even the Tao mourned, and the Divine Emperor came specifically to the great heavenly spirit land, seemingly in search of something. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch responded thoughtfully. Guan indeed knew who the mysterious forces infiltrating this universe were. Battle Court. Founded by Long Zhan, but no longer dominated by the Dragon Clan. The Annihilation God Emperor specifically came looking for Long Qing. Guan didn't believe there was no connection to Battle Court. He had annihilated the Annihilation God Emperor's incarnation, and naturally, the Annihilation God Emperor would react, which took more than 400 years, a relatively slow response. It is worth mentioning that Battle Court had crossed the boundary gate, and Guan was curious why the Heavenly Spirit God did not stop them. This group from Battle Court had high cultivation levels. Their leader was none other than the Taoist hidden immortal in his perfect form, and the weakest among them also possessed the cultivation of divine thought true immortal. They were roaming the silent destruction domain, far from the great heavenly spirit land, seemingly preparing to invade other great heaven and earths first. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch took a deep breath, and cautiously said, "Senior, if you are the Sword Dao Saint Ancestor, please instruct us. I will summon De Hong Sword Heaven to assist you in combating them." Sword Dao Saint Ancestor. That was Gu An's identity within the lifespan samsara and also Yang Xian's most prominent title. Guan replied, "What Sword Dao Saint Ancestor? You're thinking too much. I've just been to the Sword Dao River and mastered quite a few Sword Das." "Is that so?" Zhu Luo Sword Monarch didn't believe it. He too had visited the Sword Dao River, yet why couldn't he learn the Holy Heart Sword Dao? He always believed his talent was not lacking. It was just that the Holy Heart Sword Dao rejected him. Guan patted his shoulder. "Once you surpass the free immortal realm, you will see through everything." With that, Guan turned and left. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch had stayed in the Third Medicine Valley for many years, occasionally mentoring disciples. He had helped produce numerous Sword Dao geniuses for the Third Medicine Valley, and it was for this reason that Guan was willing to mentor him. He had already experienced the reincarnation tribulation and reached the 9th layer of the free immortal realm, just one step away from a breakthrough. Every time he saw Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, Guan would be reminded of Yang Pingon. That kid was equally arrogant, even daring to challenge his master. Guan felt that Yang Pingon was still alive. After reaching the Luotian Freedom Immortal Realm, his causality deduction abilities transformed, allowing him to glimpse the Qi fortune of Dahong Sword Heaven through Zhu Luo Sword Monarchs. In that vast Qi fortune, a figure was meditating in the deepest part, his Dao level unfathomable. Guan couldn't directly determine that person's cultivation level, but from the figure, he felt it was very likely Yang Pingon. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch paid his respects to Gu An's departing figure, pondering thoughtfully. He always felt that Guan didn't take the battle court seriously. He wanted to express how terrible the battle court was, but then he thought again, he had no idea how strong Guan actually was. The mighty Annihilation God Emperor was annihilated by him in one move. It was hard to say what would happen if Battle Court encountered him. Thinking that Guan might be the Sword Dao Saint Ancestor, he felt a fiery enthusiasm in his heart. No. The Saint Ancestor might not admit his identity, but he, as a junior, must act. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch raised his hand, a burst of green light erupted, followed by a blossoming ethereal green lotus. Chapter 470. Devouring heaven and earth. After sending Yilon away, Gu An's life still continued. Although his heart was filled with melancholy, he did not stop striving to become stronger. Every 2 days, he would go out to gather medicinal herbs from various medicine valleys, and take the opportunity to guide those guarding the valleys, leading a fulfilling life. As summer gave way to autumn, the desolate yellow slowly covered the rivers and mountains of the world. On this day, a man dressed in black descended from the sky and landed on a mountain peak at the edge of the Third Medicine Valley. With black hair billowing and robes fluttering, he exuded an air of vigor. It was Liya. Returning after hundreds of years, he looked at the Third Medicine Valley with profound emotions in his heart. His gaze swept across every corner of the Third Medicine Valley, finding many places both familiar and foreign. When his eyes fell on a pavilion, a complex expression emerged on his face. Even though he had reached the Nirvana realm, facing an old friend of yesteryear still made him nervous. The thought of calling Guan primordial ancestor made his face flush with heat. Despite having mentally prepared himself for centuries, his mood would fluctuate whenever he remembered. However, he reminded himself that without Gu An's care, how could he have reached this day? Just the divine exotic city within him alone provided him with an invincible confidence. Taking a deep breath, Liya prepared to descend the mountain, when suddenly he saw 2 people rushing up the side. One was ahead of the other, and they quickly arrived in front of Liya. The blood prison great saint sized up Liya with a teasing look in his eyes. The one who followed, Long Qing, stopped and looked at Liya thoughtfully, then suddenly asked, "Could you be Martial Uncle Liya?" Liya nodded slightly. He had some impression of Long Qing, though not very clear, but judging by the address, the latter should be Gu An's disciple. "Master often talks about you," Long Qing said with a smile. "He says that you became a heavenly genius and got carried away, never coming back to see him." Long Qing was not particularly interested in Liya. He had only heard Guan mention him occasionally. Hearing this, Liya's face darkened in an instant, and he snorted coldly. "Is that really what he said?" The blood prison great saint interrupted, saying, "Brat, have you forgotten me?" His first battle in the great heavenly spirit land had been against Liya and Zhang Buku, which led to his suppression for nearly 1,000 years. Although now it seemed a blessing in disguise, he always found Liya irritating, And whenever Liya returned to the valley and saw him transformed into the bull demon, he would mock him. In fact, when he was a bull, he felt that everyone was mocking him. To him, even their smiles seemed offensive. Liya's gaze settled on the blood prison great saint, scrutinizing him closely. Then, with a dramatic change in his expression, without saying another word, he raised his right hand, summoning the divine exotic city, which quickly enlarged and hung high in the sky. Long Qing also looked up, his mouth agape, astonished by the divine exotic city. His own chi strength was already formidable, but as someone who spent most of his time in the supreme sect, he rarely saw such supreme treasures. Liya fixated on the blood prison great saint, asking in a heavy voice, "What are you doing here?" The past blood prison great saint had been extremely violent, and although his appearance hadn't changed now, his demeanor was worlds apart, which was why Liya had not recognized him immediately. Remembering the battle from years ago, Liya inevitably thought of Zhang Buku, and his mood instantly turned to annoyance. Zhang Buku had always been a thorn in his side. He felt he had failed to take care of Zhang Buku, leading to the latter's current situation, where his whereabouts in life or death were unknown. The blood prison great saint taunted, "I've been here for 1,000 years and you're asking me? You should be the one I'm asking. Every time you return I'm here, it's just that you have eyes but fail to recognize." Liya furrowed his brow, reflecting carefully. Long Qing looked left and right, thinking to himself, why haven't they started fighting yet? He often sparred with the blood prison great saint and, as he had never won, he wanted to see the great saint take a beating. Perhaps Liya's cultivation level was not as high as the blood prison great saint's, but Long Qing had heard of the formidable reputation of the divine exotic city. It was said to be a pseudo-immortal path supreme treasure, capable of contending with wandering immortals. The appearance of the divine exotic city attracted more and more disciples to fly over. Liya calmed down and immediately retracted the divine exotic city into the palm of his hand. The blood prison great saint's appearance here meant he was no longer an enemy. At the very least, Guan had taken him in. Speaking of which, he held no grudges against the blood prison great saint. They had only fought over a chance opportunity back then, and he had been utterly defeated. An Exian flew over and landed on the edge of the cliff. She glared at the blood prison great saint and Long Qing for a moment before turning to Liya. She lifted her hand in a salute and said, "Martial Uncle Liya, the master has been waiting for you for a long time. Please come with me." Liya remembered an Exian, and he was somewhat surprised. After many years, an Exian no longer resembled an ordinary woman. Her every movement carried the aura of a highly cultivated being. Comparing an Exian to those heavenly geniuses of the great sects, she was not much weaker, perhaps even possessing a unique charm. It seemed Guan was quite adept at mentoring disciples. That's what Liya thought as he recalled that Hao was also a disciple of Guan, which made his heart ache even more. His greatest rival in life was a disciple of Guan, the primordial ancestor he admired and was most grateful for. It seemed as though his entire life unfolded under Guan's watch, and even though he was always getting hurt, he always managed to escape from the brink of death. As Liya pondered, he followed an Exian and left. Long Qing looked at the blood prison great saint and asked, "Did you two have a past grievance?" The blood prison great saint snorted disdainfully, "He's no threat to me." After he recounted the events of the past, Long Qing was full of emotion. The strongest being of a realm ascends, only to be humbled by mistaking a weakling with a strong backer, and ends up being taken as a mount? That was terrifying. Long Qing grew more reverent of the world, feeling that if the blood prison great saint had not encountered his master, he would probably be dead by now. Benevolent and magnanimous powerhouses like his master were rare. Boom, boom, boom. The dull roar of thunder, like fierce beasts of the wilderness roaring in unison, made the entire great heaven and earth oppressively heavy. On the barren land, corpses lay scattered everywhere, crisscrossed by gullies and fissures, with splotches of blood adorning the area. Countless cultivators and demons stood on the ground, most of them wounded, all gazing up at the darkened sky in despair. Above the churning black clouds, a figure shone with a dazzling golden light. He wore golden battle armor with a red sash around his waist, the breastplate adorned with a Qilin head that breathed out flames from its mouth and nose. Above this was a handsome yet indifferent face. This man wore a golden helm, radiating might and supremacy, with a golden big tripod floating behind him that trembled as dragon tails swished over the edge. The myriad creatures before him were no different from ants. He looked down upon the beings below, seemingly in search of something. A figure materialized out of thin air beside him, a woman in black with her hair hanging loosely, wearing a dark silver mask over her eyes, ghost-like in her appearance. Emperor, the chief fortune of this realm has ceased, and its collapse is imminent. Shall we move on to the next great heaven and earth? Asked the woman in black, her voice pleasant to hear yet cold in tone. The man in gold armor remained expressionless, his demeanor still indifferent. Tell me, where might the descendants of the Long family be hiding, and does the sword Venerable Fudao have any relations with the Long family? The woman in black answered, as of now, there seems to be no connection. Sword Venerable Fudao shelters the beings of a great heavenly spirit land. Of course, it's also possible that the descendants of the Long family are hidden in the great heavenly spirit land. But that is an existence not even the divine emperor's incarnations can defeat. We cannot rashly proceed. The golden-armored man narrowed his eyes and huffed. A mere incarnation of the silent annihilation god emperor is just a Taoist hidden immortal, and even his physical body hasn't reached the true state of a Taoist hidden immortal. The woman in black didn't respond further. The man in golden armor lifted his hand, and the big tripod behind him trembled violently as dragon roars issued forth. In an instant, the sky twisted violently, and the land below began to shatter. Rocks and corpses flew into the air as countless beings started to cry out, the entire great heaven and earth plunging into chaos. Once I have devoured 100 great heaven and earths, I will be able to unlock the path of war. Then, it won't matter where the Long family is hiding or whether Sword Venerable Fudao is connected to them. The battle court will destroy all who stand in the way, making our enemies suffer eternal damnation. The man in golden armor murmured to himself, as if speaking to his own heart. Clouds of thunder were sucked into the mouth of the big tripod, and everything in sight, stones, corpses, living beings, was pulled toward the golden big tripod, the view filled with despair and chaos. This big tripod was devouring great heaven and earth. The man in golden armor and the woman in black stood motionless before the big tripod, indifferent to the cries and death of the creatures below, awaiting the collapse and annihilation of the realm. All of a sudden, the man in golden armor sensed something. His gaze sharpened, and he turned his head slightly as a blade of sword chi tore through the space, zipping past him. He reached out and grabbed the sword chi, then frowned in surprise, scanning his surroundings. Chapter 471, Heavenly Tao Golden Core, the strongest life grid inside the attic. Guan and Leah were clinking cups, with Leah drinking swiftly and his gaze upon Guan filled with deep resentment. Guan's face was stern. Disrespecting the primordial ancestor like this? Upon hearing that, Leah's eyes widened. He slammed the table and stood up cursing. Taking advantage of me again? Come on, let's fight. Guan chuckled. Are you sure? Leah choked, his anger dissipated in an instant, and he sat down with a grim face. But for some reason, Guan's intentional provocation actually relieved his pressure. If Guan had maintained the demeanor of Sword Venerable Fudao, considering Guan's care for him, he would not have known how to face him, but now Guan had drawn him into a brotherly relationship, naturally easing his tension. Guan, who are you really? We entered the valley together back then. Leah took a deep breath and couldn't help but ask. It was the most puzzling thing to him. Back then, when they first met as youths, he never imagined that his fellow disciple with whom he had spent every day would turn out to be so formidable. In retrospect, Sword Venerable Fudao's fame began with protecting him. At that time, he and his sister Li Xuanyu were attacked by cultivators from the demon sect, and it was Sword Venerable Fudao who arrived to save them. Back then, he was not yet known as Sword Venerable Fudao, but as Flying Leaf Sword Immortal. Once everything connected, Leah had even less reason to blame Guan. He was now only curious. Guan replied, past and present lives, reincarnation is endless. Who can completely understand their origins? Instead of dwelling on the past, why not accept the present and look forward to the future, right? Who I am is not important. What matters is our friendship, my support for you. You needn't feel burdened. I'd rather you think about what kind of person you want to become in the future. He looked intently at Leah, his eyes seeming to see through Leah's thoughts. Leah was startled, not expecting Guan to understand what he was currently thinking, but remembering the power of Sword Venerable Fudao, he calmed down. An existence that surpassed 9 heavens of immortal path. His divine skills and deductions were beyond his imagination. Afterward, Leah began to envision the future, with Guan listening attentively. Li Ya was his first true friend in this life, and although there was now a great disparity in their cultivation levels, it did not change his importance in Gu An's heart. Perhaps Guan had helped Li Ya a lot, but it was all casual for him. He never found himself in trouble because of helping Li Ya. Divine Exotic City seemed immensely powerful to outsiders, but in Gu An's hands, there was hardly an opportunity to use it. Guan was not just a listener, he talked about every level of the 9 heavens of Immortal Path in detail, mentioning the fortunes of each level, which enthralled Li Ya. Until night fell, they continued talking, laughter occasionally bursting forth. The moon was bright and the stars sparse. An Exian came to the base of the attic, looked up at the windows above, and sighed. Master hasn't been this happy in a long time. Blood Prison Great Saint sitting beside her in meditation, snorted. He simply did not like Li Ya, but at his master's house, he dared not speak ill of him. An Exian watched for a while below before finally turning to leave. Ever since Yilan passed away, she had been very worried about Guan. In her eyes, her master's mood was even more important than the entire world, for if her master were to go to extremes, all living beings would suffer. Fortunately, her master was always cheerful and open-minded. Hardly anything seemed to faze him. After this event, an Exian admired Guan even more. As the moon set and the sun rose, Li Ya departed early the next day. At the base of 10,000 Sword Mountain, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch watched Li Ya's departing figure, thoughtful. The life grid has actually changed. He then turned to glance toward Guan's attic, filled with curiosity. What realm was the saint ancestor in really? He could not understand, yet thinking about stepping into a higher realm himself soon made his heart race. Under the brilliant starry sky, a gigantic stone bridge stretched across the heavens, its edges shimmering with multicolored radiance. 2 figures walked on the bridge, none other than Yongxian Emperor and Enhao. Yongxian Emperor led the way, draped in a long golden robe, with a dragon aura swirling around him as he moved. Enhao followed behind, looking around in wonder, his face full of amazement. Eventually, his gaze settled ahead where at the end of the bridge, a golden red orb glowed like the bright sun, seemingly symbolizing hope and brimming with allure. Enhao's pupils glittered with an unusual light as he felt a force. Enhao, feel carefully, this is the most powerful force in the world, a blessing from the heavenly Tao, a mere fraction of the power passed down through the heaven sect, Yongxian Emperor said as he walked, his tone filled with mystery, as if he, too, was in anticipation. Enhao couldn't help but ask, what is heavenly Tao? How does it differ from the great Tao? After stepping into the immortal realm, he had also begun to perceive the great Tao. The higher his cultivation level grew, the deeper his reverence for the great Tao became, yet he couldn't comprehend the existence of heavenly Tao. Heavenly Tao existed everywhere, much like the great Tao, but it wasn't as clear, seemingly a fusion of countless rules. Heaven and earth themselves are heavenly Tao, all living beings are also heavenly Tao, while the universe is the great Tao. The great Tao births the heavenly Tao, and the heavenly Tao gives rise to all things. In my view, the heavenly Tao is a force born from the operation of the great Tao, even more perfect and powerful. Yongxian Emperor spoke leisurely, his pace unslowed. Enhao listened and began to understand his words. After a long time, they finally reached the end of the bridge. Standing before the golden red orb, they seemed so minuscule, like grains of sand before a mountain. Yongxian Emperor looked up, gazing at the golden red orb, and said, every ruler of the immortal dynasty has contemplated the heavenly Tao. They believed that only by thoroughly understanding the heavenly Tao could one qualify for transcendence. The primordial immortal king, who established the immortal dynasty, proclaimed himself as the immortal king and sought to rival the heavens, but succumbed to misfortune subsequently, leading to the dynasty's downfall. Many years later, someone rebuilt the immortal dynasty. That was the first time the dynasty experienced the force of heavenly Tao, realizing an invisible and intangible force was orchestrating all living beings. Enhao listened intently, his eyes penetrating the golden red emanation of the orb, and what he saw was darkness, a darkness oppressive even to cultivators of the Nirvana realm. He couldn't help but ask, if it's truly invisible and intangible, what significance does it hold? Yongxian Emperor responded, this is a golden core left behind by a mighty being who had obtained the power of heavenly Tao. What? A golden core? How is that possible? Enhao exclaimed in disbelief, his eyes widening. This didn't look like a golden core at all. Yongxian Emperor's expression grew complex, and he said, This was discovered by the Immortal Dynasty in their pursuit of Heavenly Tao's power, located deep within the great Heavenly Spirit Land, known as the Heavenly Tao Golden Core. Every epoch, the Heavenly Tao Golden Core reveals some information to us, and this is why our Immortal Dynasty remains unshakable, impervious even to the Holy Court. Through the Heavenly Tao Golden Core, we learn that the great Heavenly Spirit Land was once shattered. What we see today is merely a fragment of it, albeit the most crucial one. And how pressed on? Why did such a mighty being fall? Was it related to the battle that shattered the heavens and earth? We aren't sure, but the power of the Heavenly Tao Golden Core continues endlessly, and it's this force that ensures beings in the Immortal Dynasty are born at the Immortal Path realm level, Yongxian Emperor replied, then turned to look at Anhao. Anhao looked back, feeling the pressure under his gaze and furrowing his brows. Yongxian Emperor's eyes blazed. Anhao, you are the child of destiny. No one's life grid surpasses yours. With Sword Venerable Fudao as your master and inheriting the most powerful legacy from the Immortal Dynasty, you will become the strongest under the Heavenly Tao. If you were to usher in the new epoch in the next era, the Immortal Dynasty would surely be stronger. You can accomplish what we couldn't. Anhao was about to reply when he suddenly turned his head toward the Heavenly Tao Golden Core. What sound? Anhao asked solemnly, his eyes rapidly shifting on the Heavenly Tao Golden Core, as if searching for something. Yongxian Emperor watched him, a look of astonishment crossing his features, his expression turning excited. Even the Heavenly Tao Golden Core chooses him? What kind of life grid is this, as if everything in the world was tailor-made for him? Yongxian Emperor watched Anhao, feeling stirred and involuntarily jealous. Anhao quickly noticed the hint, and looking at Yongxian Emperor, asked, Your Majesty, can't you hear it? Yongxian Emperor answered, the ruler of the Immortal Dynasty can obtain the inheritance of the Heavenly Tao Golden Core through their chi fortune, but at the end of every epoch, the Heavenly Tao Golden Core autonomously chooses an inheritor. Perhaps you have already been chosen. What did you just hear? Anhao hesitated for a moment, then said, I heard a voice urging me to run away. Chapter 472. Chosen One, Bearing Grudges and Favors, Escape Quickly? When young Immortal Emperor heard Anhao's words, he couldn't help but frown and asked, Why escape? And to where? Anhao was about to speak when suddenly, from within the Celestial Tao Golden Core, fierce golden flames erupted, rapidly burrowing into Anhao's brow. In an instant, Anhao's eyes widened. He then raised his hand, grabbing his head. He tilted his head back, and a golden thread-like line appeared on his brow, resembling the slit of an eye. Young Immortal Emperor was horrified and instinctively turned to look at the Celestial Tao Golden Core. The Celestial Tao Golden Core stood motionless in front of him, radiating an ancient aura as if it were the oldest existence in the world. It had witnessed changing seas into mulberry fields and the shifting of constellations. Endless experiences had shaped its now unfathomable presence. Anhao knelt on the ground, his body trembling and his face contorted in obvious, unimaginable pain. Young Immortal Emperor flashed to his side, intending to help him but was repelled by a powerful force. He was thrown hundreds of yards away, stumbling several steps upon landing. He looked at his right hand to see it badly burnt and bleeding profusely. He looked up at Anhao, his brows furrowed deeply. Anhao kneeled, face downward, as wisps of aura leaked from between his fingers. His body shook, unable to make any sound. Could he really be the chosen one? Young Immortal Emperor murmured to himself, his eyes filled with complexity. He had chosen Anhao due to Anhao's special destiny pattern, but there was another reason. He wanted to bind him with supporting Tao Sword Venerable. Anhao was, after all, the only openly acknowledged true disciple of supporting Tao Sword Venerable. But never had he imagined that upon Anhao's arrival, without having yet done anything, he would receive the recognition of the Celestial Tao Golden Core. Throughout the ancient and modern times of the Immortal Dynasty, he had never heard of such an event. Anhao, just who are you indeed? Anhao couldn't hear young Immortal Emperor's words. At that moment, he was in a realm of pain unimaginable to ordinary people, enduring not only intense physical agony as if his body was tearing apart but also immense destruction to his soul. He saw many scenes, all of which were his greatest fears. He saw his wife and children brutally killed, his junior sister suffering terribly, even his master's tombstone, all these things tormenting him. If you do not escape, you will end up just like them. A cold, indifferent voice echoed persistently in his ears, provoking his spirits. 37 years later. Just after the new year. Guan walked within Outer Sect City, with Blood Prison Great Saint and Long Qing following behind him. 300 years ago, Shen Xinzi returned to the Buddhist sect of the Sea of Suffering, and since then, Long Qing had completely become Guan's follower. Wherever Guan went, as long as he saw him, he would eagerly follow. Along the way, wherever Guan went, people greeted him, mostly his close friends or graduated disciples. Over 400 years had passed. The impact brought by supporting Dao's Sword Venerable had eventually calmed down. Under the suppression of the Dark Hall of Supreme Sect, people aware of Guan's identity no longer spoke carelessly, and supporting Dao's Sword Venerable once again became a legend. Even without the title of supporting Dao's Sword Venerable, as the Valley Master of Third Medicine Valley, Guan still held great renown. Master, is there really a legacy with the heaven-splitting axe? Or did you leave it there as a mere prank? Long Qing quickened his pace to walk beside Guan, curiously asking. He would occasionally visit the heaven-repairing platform to try to pull out the heaven-splitting axe, but unfortunately, he could never budge it. Nowadays, those who try the heaven-splitting axe generally want to experience the power of supporting Dao's Sword Venerable, not to actually acquire the legacy. Guan looked ahead and responded, "There certainly is, you will feel it eventually." Long Qing was about to ask more when he suddenly looked up. Not just him, Blood Prison Great Saint did the same. Above in the cerulean celestial vault, numerous silver meteors appeared, countless, all moving in the same direction, creating a magnificent scene. The cultivators passing through the streets also started noticing the anomaly in the sky. What is that? Is it sword chi? Not right, there's someone inside, might be someone from a major sect passing overhead. People? This doesn't seem like they flew over our heads, more like they descended from the sky. Don't worry, this place is the Supreme Sect. Maybe the Supreme Sect isn't the strongest, but it certainly is the safest. In these years, the Holy Court and Immortal Dynasty have been fighting each other relentlessly, both attacking and defending, yet the flames of war have never reached the Supreme Sect. The cultivators were chattering. Guan glanced, then withdrew his gaze and continued forward. Blood Prison Great Saint and Long Qing caught up, and they began discussing the origins of those meteors. Blood Prison Great Saint's divine sense captured that those meteors were indeed a group of people enveloped in sword chi and moreover, from outer heaven, which piqued Long Qing's curiosity about outer heaven. Although Long Qing still hadn't cultivated spiritual power, with age, he could feel that he originated from outer heaven and that some mission awaited him. He was no longer as anxious, but began to enjoy life, having a premonition that once he knew his mission, such life would be his luxury for the rest of his days. Guan saw through the origin of that group of sword cultivators with one look. Great Hong Sword Heaven. Summoned by Zhu Luo Sword Monarch. Great Hong Sword Heaven was ready to establish a sect in the seas near the Taitsong continent and support Guan at any time. Guan didn't care much about it. He was more concerned about another thing. That was, Xiaochuan's Dao Destruction Destiny Seal had appeared. Meaning, Xiaochuan was soon to be born in the celestial spirit great world. After many years, Guan finally awaited Xiaochuan. The thought of soon reuniting with his junior made Guan very happy. He even started humming a tune. Seeing his good mood, Long Qing boldly inquired about the origins of the sword cultivators they had just seen. There will be many opportunities to interact in the future. Guan casually answered, now even more so like an enlightened person, knowing everything but unwilling to say, letting others experience for themselves. Not to mention, this feeling of foreseeing the future and witnessing fate was pretty good. At the same time, among the mountains, a wooden house was situated halfway up the slope, and a couple stood in front of a cliff, gazing at the green mountains and blue waters. The woman held a baby in her arms, looking down at her son with worry visibly covering her beautiful face. She turned to her husband next to her and said, "Husband, you haven't named our child yet, you don't want to go back, do you?" Her husband, dressed in black with slightly grayed temples beside his handsome face, looked mature yet had a sense of vicissitude. "It's precisely because he was born that I must go back. Linger, you should understand. If we don't return, our family of 3 will never have peace. Those enemies will not let me go," the man in black said gravely. His name was Chen Luo, and his wife's name was Su Ling. As they spoke, they moved closer to each other. Su Ling rested her head on his shoulder, confusedly asking, "Is there truly no place for us within the sacred domain? What if we leave the sacred domain?" Chen Luo sighed, "It's more chaotic and dangerous outside. Without a support, even with our Mahayana realm cultivation levels, it's enormously difficult to protect our son. Let's go back. At worst, I will kneel and apologize to my mother. You have given birth to a child for me. She surely won't make things difficult for you." "But..." Su Ling hesitated. Chen Luo turned around, grabbed her shoulders and said, "Linger, trust me, I would rather die than not protect you and our son. I can't stand to see you hurt, nor do I want our son to be born with resentments." The baby in Su Ling's arms opened his eyes. His bright eyes nearly melted her heart. "Yes, we can't let him bear any resentments," Su Ling murmured to herself as if convincing herself. Chen Luo showed a smile, saying, "When I first saw this little guy, I felt he would bring good fortune. Don't worry. I heard my father just returned from the Saint Minister's side. With him presiding over the family, my mother certainly won't dare to act rashly." Su Ling took a deep breath and nodded slightly. Seeing her agree, Chen Luo finally breathed a sigh of relief, then embraced his wife tightly. "I swear, I will ensure you live a peaceful life, and I will also help you avenge the destruction of your family," Chen Luo said seriously as he stared at the horizon. Su Ling trembled slightly without responding, but slowly closed her eyes. Across the mountains, cranes flew out from the forest, flapping their wings towards the horizon, forming a V-shape. The sunlight fell on them, and they seemed like celestial cranes, as if carrying hope flying towards the ends of the earth and sea. Chapter 473. The Power from Outer Space. After wandering around the outer sect city for half a day, Guan finally returned to the valley as dusk fell. The Blood Prison Great Saint and Long Qing were still discussing matters of the Great Hong Sword Heaven Sword cultivators, and it just so happened that many disciples inside the valley were also discussing it, so they joined the conversation. Perhaps it was because Guan enjoyed chatting, which led to everyone in the Third Medicine Valley loving to idle talk. Even the Ju Luo Sword Monarch would occasionally go to the dojo to play chess and chat, gradually taking on a human flavor. Back in the loft, Guan sat at the table. His mind, however, was on Xiaochuan. He looked and saw Xiaochuan's future life. This life, Xiaochuan was born into better circumstances than the last, with parents and a distinguished family heritage, and his talent was quite good as well. However, the blemish on an otherwise beautiful situation was that Xiaochuan's parents would die when he was young, casting a shadow over his childhood. After the death of his parents, his grandparents still cherished him, providing him with everything, but he always remembered his parents' vengeance. As he grew up, he began investigating the true cause of his parents' death. As a result, he went through many battles and ultimately found out that his grandparents had forced his mother to her death, and, following his father's suicide, he collapsed. In the end, he severed ties with the Chen family and began a wandering life. Even after he became a famous powerhouse, his demeanor remained cold and devoid of smiles. Having waited centuries for Xiaochuan, Guan naturally couldn't bear to see him suffer. He immediately sent a message to Yang Jian, asking the Saint King to sort things out. Now, Yang Jian had restored his status as a Saint King, and his cultivation level was rapidly increasing, until he would recover to become a Tao Void Profound Immortal. Because of Gu An's relationship, Yang Jian received great attention from the Holy Court, leading a battlefield, with his reputation spreading far and wide. With Yang Jian making a move, it was enough to smooth out all the trouble Xiaochuan's parents were currently facing. Life is like a game of chess. I hope you can walk out of the board on your own in this life. Guan picked up the fate pen and began to write, scripting a life. Summer passed and autumn arrived. One day, Guan lay on a branch, reading a book, while instructing Zhu Xi in her cultivation. Zhu Xi sat cross-legged under the tree, her hands constantly changing, executing the mental method, her green robe fluttering with her chi force. The book Guan held was the Theory of Heaven. In recent years, the Theory of Heaven had first caused a stir, leading countless cultivators to vie for it. The other 8 true scriptures spread all over the world, creating many strong individuals. After obtaining the Theory of Heaven from Zhu Xi, Guan would study it whenever he had spare time. 400s of years before, this Theory of Heaven hadn't shown any abnormalities. But in the past year, the Theory of Heaven emitted a strange aura of causality, vague but detectable. Guan felt it carefully, It was a sign, seemingly welcoming the arrival of a certain being. Could it be that the mysterious being who created the theory of heaven was about to come to the celestial spirit great world? Very likely, for sure, the theory of heaven's sudden appearance must have some arrangement within. Following the causality implied by the theory of heaven, the scenes Guan saw kept changing, and he even saw other worlds. Master, this heaven and earth primordial skill is truly powerful. I feel that to completely master it will take many years, and I even feel it's more difficult than the step on Dao Year step. Zhu Shi raised her head to look at Guan and remarked. She was already at the Mahayana cultivation level, but she had only started receiving Guan's true teaching since after this year. Before, Guan had only pointed out the difficulties in her cultivation. Guan replied, "That's natural. Should you master it, in the future you won't be confined by this world." Hearing this made Zhu's eyes smile grow even brighter. Just as she was about to continue flattering Guan, she saw him suddenly look up into the distance, with a grave expression on his face. "Master, what's wrong?" Zhu Shi asked in astonishment. She rarely saw Guan reveal such an expression, not even when the profound desolate demon god had ravaged the human world. She had never seen Guan frown. Guan replied, "It's nothing." He was looking at the sacred domain where Xiao Chuan's parents, Chen Luo and Su Ling, returned to the Chen family and faced difficulties from them, because Su Ling's Su family had once been the Chen family's nemesis. Guan could see the cause and effect. The reason the Su family had been eradicated was that the Chen family had schemed in the shadows, plotting against the Su family, branding them as spies for the immortal dynasty, ultimately leading to their annihilation by the Holy Court. Su Ling had managed to escape death, all thanks to the protection of Chen Luo. Chen Luo was unaware of this matter, so he was very angry as to why his mother targeted his wife. The couple, holding Xiao Chuan, had just returned to the Chen family and faced difficulties. But fortunately, Yang Jian was reliable and arrived in time to defuse the crisis. As a saint king, all members of the Chen family had to bow to Yang Jian. Yang Jian stated that his reason for coming was due to the child in Su Ling's arms whose destiny was extraordinary. There was a transcendent being interested in him, hoping he could live a peaceful life in his early years until that transcendent being came for him. Yang Jian also made it clear to not let the child bear any grudges, to avoid affecting his Dao heart. Hearing this, the face of Chen Luo's mother turned unnatural, but in face of Yang Jian, she still had to force a smile. Guan had foreseen this entire process earlier, but he suddenly looked up because Xiao Chuan's fate had changed. After Yang Jian appeared, Xiao Chuan's fate had been altered, and Guan also detected a strange force of cause and effect descending on Xiao Chuan. This force came from an unknown place, arriving suddenly, and if not for Guan's profound cultivation level, he wouldn't have detected its existence. Even with the protection of the Holy Court's destiny, the great cultivators of the Holy Court did not perceive such a force of cause and effect infiltrating the sacred domain. When he looked again at Xiao Chuan's fate, what Guan saw was chaos. In the obscure void, Xiao Chuan walked alone, dense fog swirling and obscuring his figure. Whether looking back at the past or toward his future, the scenery was the same. Guan had a bad feeling in his heart. His intervention seemed to offer Xiao Chuan a beautiful childhood, but it also made his future uncertain and perplexing. Clearly, someone in the unseen was scheming against Guan, therefore targeting Xiao Chuan. Guan guessed that the adversary must be beyond the world gate, unable to cross the barriers set by the celestial spirit god to descend into this universe. Hence, they resorted to using cause and effect to scheme. He fell into deep thought. Seeing that Guan did not wish to say more, Zhu Shi could only hold back her confusion and continue meditating with closed eyes. Meanwhile, in the Chen family's mansion, the great hall was lively and prosperous. Everyone gathered around Su Ling, all eyes on Xiao Chuan in her arms. This child is indeed exceptional. His features radiate a saintly aura. Nonsense. Otherwise, why would the entity behind the Saint King take interest in him? Our Chen family is on the rise. Yes, what is the child's name? I could promise my daughter to him. You wish. The child is destined for the great Tao. Keep your little ideas to yourself. Don't displease that great being by offending the Chen family. The Chen family cultivators kept praising Xiao Chuan, and Su Ling's smile never ceased. She felt as if she were in a dream. This was completely different from what she had imagined before arriving, and she could only laugh foolishly. Chen Luo was also bemused, as he was complimenting Yang Jian along with his father and the elders of the house. Yang Jian sat in his chair, sipping tea while observing Xiaochuan, curious as to why his master had taken an interest in the boy. Just then, Su Ling's expression suddenly changed, her mouth opened, her pupils contracted, and her body stiffened. Before the people around her could react, she suddenly dissolved into a pool of blood and spilled to the floor, with Xiaochuan following, dropping towards the ground. Yang Jian appeared out of nowhere, catching Xiaochuan. He looked in horror at the blood beside him, and the great hall instantly fell silent. Chapter 474 Su Ling's shock, linger. An hysterical roar broke out as Chen Luo pushed through the onlookers. He looked at the blood on the ground, his body trembling, his face filled with utter despair. People around snapped back to their senses and frightened, they retreated. Be on guard! A middle-aged cultivator shouted sternly. He instinctively looked towards Yang Jian. Only a Saint King could have the means to execute Su Ling directly in their presence. Yang Jian looked up, his divine sense rapidly extending, but failed to capture any suspicious presence. Chen Luo knelt in front of the blood, unable to accept the reality before him. Just a moment ago, he had felt like the happiest man in the world, but now he felt as though he had fallen into hell. Xiaochuan in Yang Jian's arms seemed to feel something too and began to cry loudly, but Chen Luo could no longer pay attention to him. The patriarch of the Chen family approached Yang Jian and asked with a frown, "Saint King, what's going on?" Although he did not like Su Ling, she was, after all, a descendant of the Su family. Her death in front of them, if spread, would tarnish the Chen family's reputation. "I'm not sure either, it's truly strange," Yang Jian answered, passing Xiaochuan to the patriarch of the Chen family before vanishing on the spot. The rest of the Chen family regained their senses and promptly stepped out of the hall to be on guard. Chen Luo suddenly looked up at the patriarch of the Chen family, pleading desperately, "Father, save Linger. Save her." The patriarch took a deep breath and said, "Her soul has dispersed, it's beyond salvation." He was also filled with fear. If it wasn't the Saint King, then what exactly had happened? Su Ling's death was too bizarre, shocking not only Chen Luo but also them. At this moment, what the patriarch of the Chen family feared the most was Chen Luo also meeting with an accident, but he was helpless. He didn't even dare to approach Chen Luo, afraid that he too might suffer a calamity. Guan, far away at the Supreme Sect, witnessed all this. Everything happened too quickly. In an instant, he captured Su Ling's soul, using his own power of cause and effect to protect her soul and prevent it from being ravaged by mysterious forces of cause and effect. If that mysterious existence could execute Su Ling, couldn't it also kill others? This was Gu An's greatest concern, which is why he hid Su Ling's soul. He couldn't always keep an eye on Su Ling. Fortunately, nothing further happened, only Su Ling died. Yang Jian returned to the Chen estate and gathered with the Chen family to discuss the death of Su Ling. Suddenly, Chen Luo severed his own meridians, destroying his golden core, intending to disperse his soul. Yang Jian immediately intervened, but Chen Luo was still left a cripple. Seeing this, Guan also felt some emotion. His intervention saved Chen Luo and Su Ling, but it brought them another kind of disaster. He suddenly felt confused. If the mastermind was targeting him, why go after Su Ling and not those close to him? Many of those he cared about had a cultivation level below the Mahayana realm. Could it be that the mastermind wanted Xiaochuan to tread an irredeemable path and lure Guan away from this universe? While protecting Su Ling's soul, Guan could feel the power of that cause and effect, not as strong as his, but certainly coming from another universe. Without crossing universes, it was difficult to assess which was stronger or weaker. Guan stood up, descended from the tree, and looked toward Zhu Shi. "Continue your cultivation. I have some things to attend to." With those words, Guan vanished on the spot. He stepped into the hidden spirit palace located at the bottom of the sea. The deep-sea dragon carp, in the midst of cultivation, did not sense Gu An's arrival. Guan raised his right hand and released Su Ling's soul, then used nature's spiritual energy to reconstruct her flesh. Su Ling had a long lifespan ahead. As long as her allotted lifespan had not ended, she could regroup her flesh, an easy feat for Guan. The challenge lay in transcending ordained fates. Su Ling's flesh was reconstructed, along with her clothing, just as she appeared right before her death. The deep-sea dragon carp sensed her breath, opened its eyes, and upon seeing its master, it stood up in surprise, hurrying over. Su Ling, as if she had woken from a nightmare, sat on the ground, breathing heavily, her head covered in sweat. She looked up to see Guan, looking as handsome as an immortal god from paintings, her eyes full of fear. "You needn't worry, I won't harm you, but you can no longer return. A power beyond the 9 heavens of the immortal path wants to harm your son. Thus they killed you. From now on you'll cultivate here. In time, I'll bring your husband here. Later, you'll manage Medicine Valley for me, and one day, you 3 will be reunited," Guan said before disappearing, leaving Su Ling, a Mahayana cultivator, to rapidly come to terms with reality. A replacement had already been placed inside the hidden spirit palace, now possessing the cultivation level of the heaven-encompassing free immortal. Here the power of cause and effect from outside the universe could hardly harm Su Ling, and it would not even detect her whereabouts. Upon hearing Gu An's words, Su Ling was left stunned, her eyes vacant. The deep-sea dragon carp stood to one side, touching its head, unsure of how to strike up a conversation. It was also pondering Gu An's previous words. An existence surpassing the 9 heavens of the immortal path? And who is this woman's son? Silence fell upon the hidden spirit palace. After a while, Su Ling took a deep breath, stood up, and bowed to the deep-sea dragon carp, asking, "My name is Su Ling. May I know how to address you, and could you introduce me to this place and the senior who was here just now?" Her heart was shocked. What level of cultivation would someone who can casually mention beings beyond the 9 heavens of the immortal path possess? "Young lady?" Upon hearing this, the deep-sea dragon carp's face revealed a gentle smile, which warmed Su Ling's heart and made her feel a sense of closeness to him. Late at night, Chen Luo, with his hair disheveled, sat in a chair, his eyes empty. His mother was holding Xiaochuan, trying to comfort him, hoping he could come to terms with his situation, but unfortunately, he was not at all receptive. It was then that Yang Jian walked into the room and said to Chen Luo, "There is still hope for your wife to be alive." Upon hearing this, Chen Luo's head shot up. He immediately rushed toward Yang Jian, grabbed his arms, and asked urgently, "Really? What should I do? What do you need from me?" Yang Jian, with a serene expression, said, "Go to the supreme sect in the Taitsong continent, and you will know what to do." As soon as he heard this, Chen Luo let go and ran straight for the door. Chen Luo's mother wanted to call out to him, but Yang Jian stopped her, suggesting with significant meaning, "He has now lost all his cultivation, which is a good opportunity to temper him. Let him go to the supreme sect on his own. Do not assist him." Chen Luo's mother hesitated and asked, "Is it the supreme sect where the supporting Dao sword venerable is?" Yang Jian nodded slightly, and Chen Luo's mother immediately breathed a sigh of relief, even showing a hint of surprise in her eyes. The name of the supporting Dao sword venerable was one she had heard of, the saint who saved all living beings. Such an existence would not plot against her son. She couldn't help but look down at her grandson in her arms, wondering to herself, "My dear grandson, who exactly are you reincarnated from, that even the supporting Dao sword venerable would protect you?" Those who practice immortal cultivation always believe in past and present lives. Knowing that her grandson had a past life, she did not reject the idea. Instead, she liked him even more. Perhaps this grandson would bring a prosperous opportunity to the Chen family. It was winter, and snowflakes were fluttering down. Guan stood on the tower, watching the snow. Since Su Ling's mishap, he had always been watching over Xiaochuan. Fortunately, that force of cause and effect hadn't caused any trouble again. But in fact, the existence behind the scenes had succeeded. He had made Xiaochuan return to a state without his parents. This gave Guan some inspiration. The power of cause and effect could actually transcend the universe. He decided that from now on, his main focus would be to research the power of cause and effect and strengthen his own way of cause and effect. In the previous years, he had been perceiving different Dao rules. Now, thinking about it, it seemed better to develop one particular Dao to its extreme first. He saw Chen Luo alone in a boat, in the boundless vast sea. The small boat that Chen Luo was on was like a fallen leaf in the vast sea, which could be submerged at any time. Although Guan wanted to temper Chen Luo's character, he hadn't actually left Chen Luo to face the journey alone. After all, Chen Luo had no cultivation level. All along the way, Guan had already helped Chen Luo deal with many troubles he could not contend with. The rest of the journey would have to rely on his willpower. Yang Jian had already left the Chen family. Before departing, The head of the Chen family hoped that Yang Jian would bestow a name. Yang Jian hesitated quite a bit, but fortunately, he received a transmission from his master. Chen Chuan. That was the name for Xiao Chuan in this life. It was quite ordinary, but coming from the mouth of Yang Jian, it gave the Chen family even more hope. Did the Saint King hope for this child to be as unyielding and persistent as the mountains and rivers? Su Ling stayed in the hidden spirit palace, getting along very well with the deep-sea dragon carp and proclaiming each other as sisters. She had not noticed that the dragon carp was a male demon, considering the dragon carp's cultivation level was a bit higher than hers. Life returned to calm once again. The cause and effect of Xiaochuan did not trouble Guan. Instead, it was like a game of strategy. When he became strong enough, he would certainly drag out the existence behind the scenes. He even considered using the power of cause and effect to annihilate the other party across the universe in the future. Chapter 475. The Auspicious Celestial Horse, the book that governs life and death, Guan. A woman's voice came from downstairs, interrupting Guan's train of thought. He looked down to see Yu Yingying standing below, waving at him. Yu Yingying's maximum lifespan was 5,000 years. Previously, because of the suppression by the heavenly demon's karma, her cultivation level couldn't grow. After Guan helped her resolve the karma, she regained her inherent talent, and now her cultivation level had reached the 8th floor of the integration realm. Guan looked down at her and asked, "What's up?" Yu Yingying looked at him and said, "I'm getting ready to go back to the Star Sea congregations." "Just go, I've agreed," Guan replied with a smile. Ever since Guan's identity had been exposed, various sects had been trying to curry favor with him, including the Star Sea congregations, and particularly Yu Yingying's family, who constantly sent her messages. She was quite irritated by this, so she decided to leave the Supreme Sect and go out on her own to experience the world. Returning to the Star Sea congregations was just a pretext. She planned to wander the endless lands. Guan certainly wouldn't stop her. Hearing Guan's words, Yu Yingying hesitated. Looking up at Guan from downstairs, she felt that he was out of reach, and her heart found some relief. Since she was already prepared, why hesitate now? Guan could hear her heart's voice but didn't say anything, just smiling as he watched her. "When I attain the cultivation level of the immortal Tao, I will come back." Yu Yingying huffed, and with that, she bowed and left. Next to them, Blood Prison Great Saint, who was meditating under a tree, just glanced over before closing his eyes again to continue his cultivation. Guan watched Yu Yingying leave, feeling somewhat sentimental. No matter how much he behaved like before, the disparity in cultivation level always created an insurmountable barrier between him and the others. They were still as close as they had been, but compared to before, something was missing. Perhaps that was the price of becoming strong. Guan shifted his gaze back to appreciate the snowy landscape of Medicine Valley. It snowed every year, and if one observed carefully, they would realize that the snowscape was different every year, like the intricate interwoven karma of all beings, constantly changing. Guan recently had been contemplating creating his own divine power, a karma divine power, to kill enemies across space and time, making them unable to deduce his actions. Just like this winter snow, that would eventually melt, leaving no trace. After saying farewell to an Xian, Long Qing, and the others, Yu Yingying left that very day. Her departure sparked some discussion among the disciples, but in the end, it didn't cause much of a stir in the Third Medicine Valley. Nowadays, the Third Medicine Valley had 7,000 disciples, along with many chess and painting enthusiasts, almost like a miniature immortal cultivation realm on its own. People were always coming and going, and Yu Yingying, even in this small realm, couldn't shine brightly. Her departure was destined to be forgotten quickly. The winter snow fell heavier by the minute, as if aiming to bury the vast earth itself. After the winter snow passed, spring arrived. For this year's spring festival, Guan left the valley early. He went to the world-excluding cave heaven to celebrate with the celestial demon child and her companions. In the past, he hadn't forgotten them, but celebrating with them had always happened after the spring festival. Guan sat under a tree, drinking, with the celestial demon child peeling fruit for him. They laughed together, watching Celestial Cyan and Tianbai perform, reenacting the battle between Sun Wukong and Erlang God, complete with dialogue. Watching their performance, Guan felt they hadn't changed at all, and now reflecting on it, perhaps not all experience was beneficial. Of course, whether to gain experience or not was up to their choice. After Celestial Cyan and Tianbai finished their performance, the Celestial Demon Child took the stage, showing off her divine skills. Even without Guan speaking, the three women could keep chattering non-stop, keeping the atmosphere warm and engaged. Guan's heart grew more serene as he watched the Celestial Demon Child, while contemplating his way of cause and effect. The way of cause and effect was something all cultivators were involved with. It was the simplest yet the hardest, which is why many practitioners, as their realms advanced, would research other great das. The same way of cause and effect. What made Guan's path different from other practitioners? After so many lifespans and rebirths, Guan's accumulation of knowledge on the way of cause and effect was deep. What he lacked was creation. His Tao fruit had nurtured a path unique to him, and he had created his own great divine power exclusive to him, the longevity true words. Longevity true words, using language to determine fate, made use of the way of cause and effect. Guan looked at the fate pen on the table. He had a pen that could utter the words of karma. Did he really need a book too? Speaking of which, in his life, he had an inseparable destiny with writing books. He had written many books, some where he copied classical Huaxia texts, and some he created himself. If he could write the way of cause and effect into the books, would it be feasible? Guan suddenly thought of the Book of Life and Death from Journey to the West. With one stroke in the Book of Life and Death, one could determine life and death. His ideas began to burst forth, slowly entering meditation. After a while, the merry Celestial Demon Child, Celestial Cyan, and Tianbai suddenly sensed Guan's Tao intent. They turned their heads to look at Guan, their eyes filled with astonishment. Not daring to disturb Guan, they exchanged glances and then sat down to meditate, feeling Guan's Tao intent. The world excluding cave heaven followed suit and quieted down. Under the dazzling starry sky, on the barren land, wavering shadows were moving forward. Leading the group were two men, namely the divine exotic realm master and Zhang Buku. Zhang Buku was dressed in a set of worn black clothes, which loosely revealed his robust muscles, quite striking to the eye. His black hair was carelessly draped down his back. Looking up, his eyes bright and clear, he asked, "Master, how far are we from the celestial spirit great world?" The divine exotic realm master replied, "Very far, so far that I can no longer sense the power of divine exotic city. To have come to this place is our fortune. Perhaps we should let go of the past." After leaving the celestial spirit great world, they had been traversing the great heaven and earth non-stop until a few years ago when they were swept into the darkness by a river filled with the rules of space and time, completely severing their connection with the celestial spirit great world. Upon hearing this, a look of sadness crossed Zhang Buku's face. He missed his martial uncle, longed for Li Ya, but he was no longer that weak self. Wherever he went, he had to fight to become stronger. Suddenly, he saw meteors streaking across the starry sky like torrential rain, sweeping across the entire starry sky, a magnificent sight. Immediately after, he was struck by an awe-inspiring scene. A colossal celestial horse flashing brilliant light emerged behind the countless meteors, stepping on auspicious clouds, crossing the land they were on. Under this colossal celestial horse, no matter how high their cultivation level, all would feel extremely insignificant, and the dark land was lit up as if moving from nighttime to daylight. The divine exotic ghost king and the divine exotic resentful ghosts behind them were also startled, causing an uproar. "What is that?" Zhang Buku couldn't help asking the divine exotic realm master. The divine exotic realm master, living the longest, could always solve his puzzles. The divine exotic realm master looked at the cloud-striding, bright celestial horse with a complicated gaze and said, "That symbolizes the auspiciousness of the heavenly Tao. You can call it a celestial horse. They are supreme, being able to cross yin and yang, across all heavens and myriad realms. It is said that all beings who see the celestial horse will gain the blessing of destiny. It seems our luck isn't bad." "Celestial horse?" Zhang Buku murmured to himself. Although he had seen many and was well informed about divine beasts and fierce beasts, he had never seen an auspicious being like the celestial horse. The celestial horse was so majestic that it seemed even larger than heaven and earth, radiating a holy light that made people yearn for it, as if it was the most perfect creation in the world. Even after the celestial horse following the meteor swarm had disappeared, and the land had fallen back into darkness, the graceful figure still lingered in Zhang Buku's mind. What kind of existence could subdue such an auspicious being? Zhang Buku had this thought, and immediately after, he felt ashamed. How could one defile such an auspicious being? He shook his head and carried on. The divine exotic resentful ghosts continued to discuss the celestial horse, feeling amazed and unforgettable. The divine exotic realm master walked ahead, saying, "Perhaps there is an incredible fortune waiting for us ahead. The celestial horse is a sign." A smile appeared on his face. Since coming to this universe, he had finally seen hope to shake off the role of a chess piece. Zhang Buku didn't think so much. He just wanted to become stronger. If Martial Uncle and Li Ya could see the celestial horse, how good that would be. Unfortunately, you're not so lucky. Thinking to himself, Zhang Buku amused himself with the thought. The starry sky was brilliant, unable to illuminate the land, but they pressed on through the darkness towards the dawn. In the third Medicine Valley, at the entrance of Medicine Valley, Guan strolled forward, toying with a black leather book in his hand. He flung the black leather book into the air, caught it again, and continued to playfully advance. "Master!" A voice full of surprise called out, and an Exian appeared out of nowhere in front of him. Guan smoothly caught the flying black leather book and tucked it into his bosom. This was a book that governed life and death. It was not something others could touch. Chapter 476. Legend of the Sword God. Master, where on earth did you go? How could you disappear for a year without a word? An Exian glared at Guan, complaining, yet her eyes were filled with delight. Guan gave her a look and said, "It's just 1 year. In our sect, when great cultivators go into seclusion or leave, isn't it for decades or even centuries? Look at you. Without me around, can't you manage Medicine Valley anymore?" He had been in a world-excluding cave heaven, absorbed in enlightenment, sitting for a year, worrying not only an Exian but also the profound mysterious Zhunren of the North Sea mountain ridge. The folks in End-of-the-World Valley, on the other hand, didn't show much reaction. After all, that Medicine Valley belonged to Li Xiandao, and Guan was just overseeing it. Third Medicine Valley and Profound Valley were also not in disarray. Most disciples believed that nothing would happen to their master after being away for only a year. Who in this world could hurt their master? The reason for Nzin's panic wasn't fear that something had happened to Guan. She was just afraid that Guan might leave the celestial spirit great world. She had heard that beyond the sky lay an even vaster world where many great cultivators never returned, pursuing their own great Tao. For someone with cultivation like her master's, staying in celestial spirit great world was only good for tempering the heart. It offered no other benefits to him. Having followed her master for so long, an Exian certainly didn't want to be abandoned. "People are only scared. It's because you didn't even mention it," an Exian said with a hint of melancholy. Guan, who held affection for his disciple as if she were his own daughter, didn't continue to tease her but assured her, "Don't worry. If Master really were to leave, I would tell you, and if you wish to follow, I would take you with me." Upon hearing this, Nzin's face lit up with joy. She clung to Guan's arm, pulling him toward the valley, and at the same time, she recounted the events that had taken place in Third Medicine Valley during the year. With so many people in Medicine Valley, conflicts and amusing incidents happened every day. An Exian spoke of nothing significant, and Guan listened carefully. After listening, the only thing that really mattered to Guan was that profound celestial intent had returned and had brought a bunch of books he liked. When talking about this, an Exian looked at Guan with scrutiny. If not for the fact that Guan could hear her thoughts, he might have suspected she had used divine sense to peek. Along the way, every disciple and cultivator who saw Guan greeted him excitedly and paid their respects, causing quite a stir before Guan finally returned to his loft. He sat at his desk, took out the black-covered book he had been holding, and placed it on the desk. The cover showed black scale armor patterns which felt textured, mysterious, and bizarre, quite unsettling to behold. Because it was a cause and effect treasure, Guan had purposely fashioned an imposing appearance for it. Different from the Immortal Path Ultimate Treasure, the Fate Pen, this treasure was shaped by the Tao intent of the heaven-encompassing free immortal. Its tier was higher, and having just taken shape, it could still grow. It needed Guan to continuously nourish it with a way of cause and effect. Now, what Guan needed to do was to inscribe it with a name. What name should I give it? Guan fell into deep thought, His right hand rested on the desk, fingers lightly tapping the surface. It wasn't until the sunlight outside gradually reddened that he finally came up with an idea. He picked up the fate pen and began to write on the black book. Infinite. Sword. Book. When the final stroke was drawn, the 4 characters burst into golden light and began to sear the cover, then sank in, forming golden letters. Infinite Sword Book. Guan thought of his primordial infinite body and the power of infinity, and he intended the book to embody limitless potential, omnipotence. The reason it included the word sword was that he did not want to forsake his sword Tao. He wanted to combine his sword Tao with the power of cause and effect to create a sword Tao of cause and effect capable of slashing through universes. The Infinite Sword Book began to tremble, then floated in the air, absorbing the power of cause and effect from heaven and earth. In an instant, all the cause and effect within the Tai Tsong continent shone within it. Its range extended farther and wider until the entire celestial spirit great world was reflected within it. Every being who had reached the realm of a free immortal felt a sudden palpitation, but when they opened their eyes, they saw nothing out of the ordinary, nor could they discern any cause and effect. Inside a hall shrouded in clouds and mist, the saint minister sat cross-legged on the steps, below which there was a pond, its surface a shimmering blue, fantastically beautiful, with faint starlight twinkling within. The saint minister opened his eyes, frowning. He started calculating with his fingers but could figure nothing out. The end of the era, the rules recede, it truly becomes all the more dangerous. The saint minister muttered to himself, feeling immense pressure just thinking about the situation now. Recently, many mysterious forces had appeared outside of heaven, attacking the silent extinction domain. Within heaven as well there were quite a few indeterminate free immortals, and then there was the supporting Tao Sword Venerable who could easily annihilate the entire celestial spirit great world. As a saint minister of the Holy Court, he greatly disliked this feeling of being unable to control the situation. It left him feeling powerless and even unable to see hope. Could it be that the fate of Holy Court was running out, just like the dominators of the worlds in the vast stretches of time that had passed away? The saint minister sank into confusion. In a daze, he saw a figure approaching from the far end of the great hall. Your Majesty! The saint minister spoke to himself as if in a dream. When the free immortals of the world felt panic, the common people did not notice anything unusual. The Holy Court and immortal dynasty still fought as always. But compared to several hundred years ago, mortal spirits were seldom affected, so there were still many places of peace in the world. The next day at dawn, Guan descended the stairs, joining his disciples for a rare session of drill practice. Having been gone for a year, he would be busy harvesting medicinal herbs for the next few days. Half an hour later, Guan rode away on the blood prison Great Saint, preparing to head for the end of the world valley. Just as he left the supreme sect, a figure appeared before them. It was Zhu Luo Sword Monarch. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch inhaled deeply as he looked at Guan, saying, "Senior, there is something I must tell you. Did you feel anything unusual yesterday?" Guan feigned confusion and asked, "I did not. What is it you want to talk to me about?" Years ago, a sword intent appeared briefly within the silent extinction domain. I was just surprised at the time, but over the years, I've discussed this sword intent with my sectmates, and we've learned something very frightening, said Zhu Luo Sword Monarch with a solemn expression. Communicating through sword intent? Was it to avoid being traced? Great Hong Sword Heaven had something up its sleeve. Guan pondered while pressing for more information. What is it exactly? The blood prison Great Saint, who had taken on the form of a bull, also showed a curious expression. He knew Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's cultivation level was profound, so he never provoked him. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch hesitated for a moment before saying, "This matter involves the secrets of Great Hong Sword Heaven. The primordial ancestor who created the Great Hong Sword Heaven is hailed as the Sword God by the Great Hong realm. He is also the only true disciple of the Sword Tao Saint Ancestor, the only being who has ever defeated the Sword Tao Saint Ancestor. After the Sword Tao Saint Ancestor's fall, his temperament changed drastically. To enhance the Sword Tao, he started to take extreme measures, madly devouring sword intent and Sword Tao, rapidly growing stronger and even at one point became a public enemy of the universe, provoking several great worlds to join forces against him. He has disappeared for many years, his life and death unknown. The sword intent that flashed past years ago was very complex. It made me feel disorderly, terrifying and agitated. Only his sword intent could match, and yesterday I and my sectmates, the free immortals, all felt a quiver in our hearts, suspecting that the sword god might have reappeared in the world. He might even be targeting you. With that, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch looked at Guan with a tense expression. This kid feared neither heaven nor earth. It was the first time Guan had seen him so wary of someone, even more so than of the battle court. Guan asked, compared to the divine emperor of the silent extinction domain, how does the sword god of your great Hong sword heaven measure up? Zhu Luo Sword Monarch had mentioned the sword intent, which Guan had also felt. It was very fierce and disappeared quickly, likely having entered into the river of Sword Dao. The river of Sword Dao is a manifestation of the rules, residing on another plane, independent of the universe. He had not expected that the master of that sword intent was the sword god, Yang Pingon. If what Zhu Luo Sword Monarch said was true, then it was indeed a possibility because Guan had also sensed that the sword intent was very complex, even carrying a hint of demonic possession. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch shook his head, saying, "How could I know such comparisons? It's beyond my level." Guan laughed, saying, "All right, I am aware now, you may step aside." Hearing this, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch hurriedly made way. The Blood Prison Great Saint lifted his hooves, marching forward. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch watched as Guan's figure receded into the distance. Seeing his nonchalant demeanor, he became even more convinced that Guan was the Sword Dao Saint Ancestor. The legend says the Sword God defeated the Sword Dao Saint Ancestor, but how can the Saint Ancestor not take the Sword God seriously? Could the stories be fabricated? Zhu Luo Sword Monarch secretly contemplated, feeling it was very likely. After all, it was the Sword God who founded the Great Hong Sword Heaven, not the Sword Dao Saint Ancestor. The successive sword masters of Great Hong Sword Heaven naturally wished for it to be the strongest, so they would intentionally exalt their founding teacher. The thought that the Sword God and the Sword Dao Saint Ancestor might duel again dispelled Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's nervousness, replaced instead by excitement. Chapter 477. 150 billion years lifespan. Guan heard Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's inner voice behind him, and his lips curled up. A decisive battle with Yang Pingon? Had Yang Pingon not taken advantage of his injury years ago, how could he have won a match against him? Throughout Yang Xian's life, as long as the enemy was not 2 great realms higher than him, he had never been defeated. Only after they walked far away did Blood Prison Great Saint finally couldn't help but inquire about the sword god mentioned by Zhu Luo Sword Monarch. He felt sure his master knew everything and was omniscient, merely pretending not to reveal the secrets of heaven. His master was an existence that stood above the 9 heavens of the immortal path. Being called a sword god naturally means he is formidable. Look at our celestial spirit great world. Do we have a recognized sword god? Sitting on the back of Blood Prison Great Saint, Guan casually responded. Then he took out the infinite sword book, ready to ponder the divine skills of Sword Dao. The Sword Dao is hidden in the book, with thoughts that kill the enemy. The targeted enemy will face a sword directly, unable to dodge, unable to endure, unable to deduce. This was Guan's concept for the infinite sword book. The specific sword technique still needed careful consideration. He was not in a hurry. He had plenty of time to think about Sword Dao. Hearing Guan's words, Blood Prison Great Saint fell into endless reverie, feeling he needed to remake his great saint reputation. At the very least, he wanted all living beings to admire him, rather than proclaiming himself as the great saint. 10 years later. In the sacred domain, in the Chen family mansion, 12-year-old Chen Chuan was practicing swordsmanship. Dressed in white robe and black trousers, his black hair tied high at the back of his head, he already possessed a handsome countenance despite his young age. The patriarch of the Chen family, Chen Xiong, stood on the stone steps, his left hand behind his back, his right hand in front, holding 2 jade stones. He watched Chen Chuan's posture with a face full of relief and indulgence. Chen Chuan had shown extraordinary talent since he was a child. Without anyone teaching him the cultivation technique, he was able to cultivate spiritual power on his own, which had shocked the entire Chen family. Furthermore, with the existence backing the Saint King also supporting Chen Chuan, he had become the Chen family's biggest pride and hope. Yang Jian had 2 great beings behind him. Whether it was the Saint Minister or supporting Dao Sword Venerable, they were beings the Chen family looked up to, unattainably high. The kid is growing up fast. Chen Xiong stared at Chen Chuan, feeling emotional inside. The thought of Chen Chuan leaving the Chen family made him somewhat reluctant, especially thinking about the fate of Chen Chuan's parents, which made him even more sympathetic towards the boy. Though he didn't like Su Ling, He didn't want to see his grandson lack parents. Chen Chuan sheathed his sword and turned to face Chen Xiong, saying, "Grandfather." He didn't have the liveliness of his peers, appearing very composed. He quickly walked up to Chen Xiong and looked at him, prompting Chen Xiong to reach out and touch his head. "My dear grandson is really amazing. In the future, you will definitely become the greatest in the world. I don't know which immortal is blessing you, giving you such incredible talent," Chen Xiong said with a chuckle. Chen Chuan smiled faintly and replied, "There's no immortal blessing me. If there were, my mother wouldn't have died." Chen Xiong's smile froze, and he quickly changed the subject, asking, "You've been practicing that sword technique for months now. You've mastered the moves, so why continue practicing?" Chen Chuan responded, "During the process of practicing, I have gained many insights. Although it's the same sword techniques, I can perceive other sword techniques during the practice." Chen Xiong was secretly amazed, wondering about the mysterious depth of the sword technique left by the Saint King. He had also seen the sword technique left by Yang Jian and thought it was just an ordinary beginner's sword technique, but he still listened to Yang Jian's advice and let Chen Chuan practice it. "Really?" Chen Xiong asked, delighted. Could this be a test left by the Saint King? Does this mean Chen Chuan has already passed the test? His eyes grew brighter, feeling that Chen Chuan was an unprecedented genius for the Chen family, capable of bringing transformation to the family. "Really, I saw the mountains, saw the flowing waters, saw the boundless oceans, saw the brilliant Milky Way, and I even saw a river." Chen Chuan was recounting what he had seen and heard, and Chen Xiong listened intently, becoming increasingly excited, as if he were beholding a priceless treasure. The summer breeze rustled the leaves in the courtyard, and the sight of the grandfather and grandson standing on the steps was so beautiful. When Chen Chuan had finished speaking, Chen Xiong sincerely exclaimed, "My dear grandson, I can hardly wait to see your name celebrated across the world. You're bound to become the most formidable sword cultivator in the Holy Court, perhaps even destined to end this chaotic era and crush the immortal dynasty." Chen Chuan's cheeks flushed slightly as he scratched his head and said, "Grandpa, you're exaggerating, how could I be that great?" Chen Xiong burst into hearty laughter and started to recount the legendary tales and mighty figures of the Holy Court, which left Chen Chuan with eyes full of admiration. He was, after all, still a youth. Admiring heroes was in the nature of youths. Unbeknownst to them, someone was perched on the eave of the nearby roof, watching them. It was Guan. At that moment, even the free immortal standing in front of him wouldn't have been able to detect his presence. Watching Chen Chuan's life, Guan thought about the time Xiao Chuan was with his grandson. Xiao Chuan was smiling then, saying how great it would be to be such a good grandfather. "Now you've fulfilled that dream," Guan said with a smile on his face. He also heard Chen Chuan's heartfelt ambition. This youngster was even more ambitious than in his previous life. "In that case, as your senior brother, I will fulfill your wish, since you have also devoted a lifetime to me." Guan raised his right hand and waved his sleeve toward Chen Chuan. In an instant, a stream of Dao intent transformed into a gentle breeze that blew towards Chen Chuan, causing his black hair to flutter and his white robe to billow. Chen Chuan's eyes widened, and he seemed somewhat dazed. Noticing his grandson's unusual behavior, Chen Xiong couldn't help but ask, "Grandson, what's wrong?" Chen Chuan subconsciously replied, "Nothing, I just had a new insight." "Really?" Then continue pondering, "Grandpa shouldn't disturb your cultivation." Chen Xiong hastily moved aside. Seeing this, Chen Chuan immediately closed his eyes and immersed himself in his own insights. Chen Xiong stepped back 10 paces, watching him, and he too seemed somewhat dazed. In Chen Xiong's eyes, the sunlight on Chen Chuan's body became even brighter, like the legendary immortals, on the brink of ascension at any moment. Guan was still standing on the roof, looking down at Chen Chuan. Suddenly, Sword Gu Ming harbors hostility towards you, filled with the intent to kill. Would you like to employ lifespan detection? Guan raised an eyebrow. Usually, he would trigger life expectancy predictions since he met many people, but they were almost all merely displeased. It had been a long time since someone wanted to kill him. Interesting. He immediately chose to employ lifespan detection. Sword Gu Ming, mid-stage in Zizai Immortal Realm 318,726,309/15 billion/15 billion. 15 billion years lifespan? Shen Tian Free Immortal. Gu An's divine sense swept across the universe in an instant, not capturing this Shen Tian Free Immortal. Silent Extinction Domain indeed had free immortals, but they could be counted on one hand, all secluded from the world. Could this person be from outside the universe? Guan pondered briefly, then flash-stepped back to the hidden spirit palace. The moment he landed, he pulled out the infinite sword book from his bosom. Chapter 478. A sword. Guan held the infinite sword book and walked to his usual rocking chair. When he appeared, Su Ling, who had been meditating next to the garden, immediately stood up and saluted him. The deep-sea dragon carp, more audacious, had grown familiar with Guan and approached him curiously, asking, "The infinite sword book? What is this book?" Guan answered nonchalantly, "It's a forbidden book, don't look at it. Hurry up and go practice, and don't delay me from reading." Seeing his master was not as gentle as usual, the deep-sea dragon carp quickly scurried away. Guan then took out the fate pen. With one hand, he flipped open the infinite sword book, and with the other he held the pen, its tip against the page. This was his first time utilizing the infinite sword book. His heart filled with anticipation. The enemy might come from beyond the cosmos. He didn't know if he could slay it. And if he did, could he gain lifespan? He stopped contemplating these thoughts and focused on channeling the power of karma into the infinite sword book. In the cosmos, countless nebulae speckled the expanse. Some like running giants, some like the palms of a creator. Others resembled mysterious fierce beasts, colorful and bizarre, everything looking fantastically alien. A streak of sword light sped through the cosmos carrying two figures, one a vigorous man clad in purple and standing tall, the other an old, hunched man with a back bent by time. The man in purple had a crystal crown on his head, his brows emanating sharpness, and his eyes reflecting two swords, adding an oppressive air to his gaze. The old man beside him, shorter than his shoulder, held a wooden staff, his cheeks dotted with age spots, two antler-like tufts of white hair among his mane, reminiscent of deer antlers. "Master, are you really going to act on behalf of the Divine Emperor? A being the Divine Emperor cannot deal with is likely not so simple," the old man with antlers said, frowning with worry in his eyes. The man in purple was Sword Gu Ming. He replied, "If it were so simple, the Divine Emperor wouldn't have sought me out. Indeed, his status does not permit him to pass through the world gate. If I wish to step into higher realms, I must rely on him. I can already feel my own limits. Though I can live many more years, nearly immortal, I feel I cannot reach higher realms." The old man with the antlers fell silent. He too wished for his master to grow stronger, yet the thought of venturing into that part of the cosmos filled him with unease. As long as the opponent doesn't surpass the profound Yuan-free immortal, it cannot be my match. If they were truly that formidable, the celestial spirit god would not allow such a being to continue growing, Sword Gu Ming continued, his voice calm. His gaze seemed to cross the cosmic space and time, landing on the celestial spirit great world. The celestial spirit god is indeed formidable. Even when the great Tao trembles, he still stands guard there. "It seems there is a great secret," the old man with antlers lamented. "That has nothing to do with us. The Divine Emperor would also not meddle with such karma." Sword Gu Ming's words made the old man with antlers nod. He dared not discuss the celestial spirit god further, fearing taboo. At that moment, the sword light beneath their feet suddenly stopped and dissipated. Everything happened so abruptly that the old man with antlers quickly turned his head to look at Sword Gu Ming. He saw Sword Gu Ming trembling all over, his face showing terror. "Master, what's happening?" the old man with antlers asked nervously. Sword Gu Ming's forehead was beaded with cold sweat, and he managed to utter, "Quick, escape, escape." The old man with antlers turned pale with shock, instinctively scanning the surroundings, his divine sense spreading out, unable to detect any danger. He looked again at Sword Gu Ming, having never seen him so unnerved, not even during the profound Yuan celestial tribulation. "Master!" The old man with antlers panicked, not knowing what to do, unclear about what had happened. "There's a sword, can't you see it?" Sword Gu Ming said laboriously, his eyes bloodshot, staring fixedly ahead. The elder with antlers followed his gaze, but saw nothing. "Where is it? How far away from us?" the elder with antlers anxiously asked. "Right in front of us." This response from Sword Gu Ming made the elder's hair stand on end, as if he were in the depths of an abyss. He was a Taoist Zhong Zizai immortal in cultivation level, yet saw nothing. He believed his master wouldn't lie or see illusions. It must be that his realm wasn't high enough to perceive the sword. "Let's run away," the elder with antlers gritted his teeth and said. Sword Gu Ming's pupils trembled and couldn't answer him anymore. At this moment, in front of Sword Gu Ming, an indescribable colossal sword hovered ahead, the tip not more than 100 yards away. From afar, it seemed as if they were right next to the gargantuan sword, its length and size unknown. In front of this sword, they were smaller than dust particles. This sword was the image of the Cyan Hong sword, not emitting any dazzling light, but exerting an endless and immense pressure on Sword Gu Ming. Sword Gu Ming felt the breath of death. From this sword, an overwhelmingly terrifying karma force emanated, submerging him like a tide. He was resisting with his own sword intent, but it was utterly useless. The sword tip was still advancing. Sword Gu Ming couldn't escape or fight back. He could only resist with all his might, but the more he resisted, the stronger the pressure felt. By now, he couldn't even speak. In his sensory world, the elder with antlers had disappeared. Seeing that Sword Gu Ming couldn't respond, the elder with antlers' body shook even more intensely, fueling his panic. What kind of power could push his master to such a state? He was caught in an inner struggle. Should he flee or stay with his master? But even if he stayed, he could be of no help whatsoever. This Taoist Zongzizai immortal had never felt so powerless before. Suddenly, Sword Gu Ming's eyes widened as he began to speak. "Quick!" But after uttering just one word, the entire cosmos fell silent in an instant. The elder with antlers widened his eyes. Under his watch, Sword Gu Ming exploded into countless light stars. All these light stars were made of Sword Gu Ming's sword intent, and they were also fading away. The elder with antlers' eyes bugged out, and his mouth unconsciously hung open. A profound yuan-free immortal just died like that? Impossible. You have successfully snatched 1,440,090,872 years of lifespan from Sword Gu Ming, mid-stage of profound yuan-free immortal realm. A prompt jumped out in front of Gu An's eyes, startling him and causing his heart to surge with excitement. He had succeeded. He had snatched over 1.4 billion years of lifespan in one go. That was better than the fruits of 100 years of farming. The key point was that Guan had executed the kill with karma divine power, without ever appearing before the enemy. Previously, neither clones nor puppets could help him snatch lifespans, so he was hesitant about the power of karma. Doesn't this mean that he could now hide in the shadows, wildly reaping the lifespans of his enemies? Gu An's heartbeat quickened, unable to calm down. In this instant, he envisioned many possibilities, even birthing sinister thoughts. Right then, Guan sensed something. His complexion slightly changed, and he immediately stood up and walked toward the gate of the hidden spirit palace. Chapter 479. Battling against the heavens. After entering the hidden spirit palace, Guan flashed to the center of the grand hall and sat down to meditate, beginning to cultivate energy. He felt a strange power trying to harm him. It was somewhat like the way of cause and effect, but more terrifying than that. Guan used his own power of the way of cause and effect to resist, but he couldn't neutralize this eerie force quickly. As time passed, Guan gradually understood this eerie force. It was karma retribution. It seemed that there was some power in the cosmos maintaining balance over those who used the way of cause and effect, to prevent the collapse of order. Though the way of cause and effect is one of the 3,000 great Tao, it has the ability to influence all Tao, involving time, reincarnation, life and death, and so on. A small change in cause and effect could overturn the past. Without suppression, the way of cause and effect would be tantamount to the strongest Tao. But in fact, the 3,000 great Tao are all equal, with no distinctions of strong or weak, depending only on the cultivator's achievement in their respective Tao. The stronger the force of cause and effect used, the greater the karma retribution suffered. Guan opened his eyes and pulled up his attribute panel to check. He found that his lifespan was decreasing, yet his lifespan had already been the number he had seized, which was now 54 billion years. While cultivating energy, he waited. Karma retribution couldn't possibly deduct his 14 billion years of lifespan, could it? If so, then this was equivalent to no lifespan stolen at all. Worse, not only had he not gained lifespan, but he had also lost it. Guan furrowed his brows, but fortunately, after a short while, The speed at which the lifespan numbers jumped began to slow. After the time of one stick of incense had passed, his lifespan no longer decreased. He had lost a total of 2 billion years of lifespan, which meant that he still gained 12 billion years of lifespan. That was a huge profit. Guan exhaled in relief. He raised his right hand, looked at his palm, and saw black lines emerge, like the creepy wounds of poisoning. He had withstood the karma retribution, but these remaining traces still required time to erase. For the time being, his strength hadn't been damaged, only leaving the short-term indelible marks of cause and effect, which was no significant trouble. But having just used the infinite swordbook and encountered such retribution, what about the future? Guan felt the need to continue improving the infinite swordbook, to enhance its power of cause and effect so that one day he could escape karma retribution. Regardless, this time not only had he eliminated a hidden danger, but he had also gained 10 billion years of lifespan, making it a double blessing. Guan adjusted his emotions and looked back at the infinite swordbook. In the process of using the infinite swordbook, Guan also saw Sword Guming and the Antlered Elder through the sword of cause and effect, but he couldn't deduce their causality through this perspective anymore. Under the starry sky, before the celestial Tao golden core, and Hao and the young immortal emperor sat side by side in meditation, each cultivating their energy. Suddenly, the young immortal emperor opened his eyes, furrowing his brow, and sharply turned to look at the celestial Tao golden core. The celestial Tao golden core was still burning fiercely, appearing mystical and powerful, with its surface flames resembling the laws of the operation of all things, continuously renewing, displaying various great Tao on it. And Hao, sensing his movement, also opened his eyes to look at him, asking curiously, "What's wrong?" The young immortal emperor stared at the celestial Tao golden core and said, "Suddenly, one great disaster lessened in the world. It's strange but indeed so." "One great disaster lessened? What did you see before?" And Hao grew more curious. "While contemplating the celestial Tao golden core, I saw the future, where a river hung in the heavens for all living beings to see. This river, manifested by the sword Tao, would bring a cataclysm to annihilate heaven and earth." The young immortal emperor replied, his thoughts drifting back, narrating with a tone filled with certain feelings that made Hao visualize the scene depicted in his words. And Hao couldn't help but ask, "So, such a calamity suddenly disappeared. Could it be that a great power has changed the destiny of great heaven and earth? Does that mean the celestial spirit great world will be peaceful from now on and no longer chaotic?" The young immortal emperor snorted. "Do you really think the tribulations of the world stem from the ambition of some powerful being? It's not so. Whether it's the immortal dynasty or the holy court, destiny is shrinking. Only by devouring the destiny of the other can one preserve the Taoist lineage. This is the will of great heaven and earth at play, continuously unleashing cause and effect, forcing catastrophe after catastrophe to come." He turned back, took a deep breath, and said, "When this great disaster ends, a new one will begin. There's only one way to put a complete stop to it." "What way?" And Hao asked with a frown. He disliked this kind of predestined fate, as it made him feel that his talent was a gift from heaven, and that the Tao practice he cultivated was also chosen by the will of great heaven and earth. Everything seemed to lose its meaning. The young immortal emperor replied, "That is for the immortal dynasty and holy court to become one, with the victor annihilating 99% of all living beings, reducing the vitality of great heaven and earth to the extreme, reshaping the rules of heaven and earth, whereafter the will of heaven and earth will naturally subside." And Hao's face changed dramatically. 99% of all living beings must die? Such a will of heaven and earth contradicted his fantasy. At that time, such a situation would be against the righteous Tao, and the victor would hardly be at ease. No one wants to slaughter all living beings, so the immortal dynasty and holy court decided to fight to the death, also reducing the number of each other's beings, said the young immortal emperor, his expression indifferent as if devoid of any emotion. And Hao's brow furrowed deeper. He thought of another matter, asking, "Could the invasion from outer heaven become an unpredictable factor? Don't let the outer heaven power have the last laugh." The young immortal emperor scoffed. "They are mere bandits. If their ambition becomes too great, they will only perish along with their Tao." And Hao wished he could say that hundreds of years ago, if not for his master, we would all have died or been taken over by the heavenly demon. But then he thought again, perhaps his master's intervention was a part of the will of great heaven and earth, or if not his master, then some other powerful being would have intervened. Yes. His master was so powerful. Why would he remain in the celestial spirit great world? Could it be that his master represents the will of great heaven and earth? And Hao reached this conclusion and suddenly felt an epiphany. Wandering the world for so many years, he had a good understanding of history, knowing that an era of peace had lasted countless years and the current upheaval was a rarity in a million years. The supporting Dao sword venerable had appeared only a little over 1,000 years ago, after the disappearance of Shengtian. The more he thought about it, the more it seemed to make sense, as if he had seen through the truths of the world. Wait, if his master represented the heavenly Dao, then his master choosing him. And Hao's eyes changed as he entered a mysterious state. The young immortal emperor, sensing this change, could only lament inwardly that the heavenly Dao was unjust. Rather than envy in Hao, he was more curious as to why the calamity had vanished. In his peering, that calamity was more desperate than any past disasters, and he could not forget the figure of Sword Gu Ming. That figure was even more terrifying than the profound desolate demon god or the silent destruction god emperor. What kind of being is contending from behind the scenes? Is this a battle against heaven? Can one really win against heaven? The young immortal emperor mused silently, then looked back at Hao. If Hao was the chosen of the heavenly Dao, would he stand a chance against such beings in the future? He couldn't imagine what Hao would look like in the future. When autumn came, within Profound Valley, Guan sat on a cliff, watching Jiang Shi and Enchanting engaged in combat in the sky before him. Both had reached the level of profound heart realm. When Enchanting first arrived, he was just a teenager, barely 20 years old, and now he was nearing 1,000. It was estimated that in another 500 years, this master-disciple pair would attempt to break through to the Nirvana realm. Guan had cultivated them within Profound Valley and had not invested much effort. Their reaching the profound heart realm was inseparable from their own hard work. The blood prison great saint sat behind Guan, remarking, "Enchanting, this kid really is increasingly showing the demeanor of his ancestor." And Shengtian, who bore a strong resemblance to Hao, had a presence that grew even more pronounced after becoming powerful. "He's still a far cry from it," Guan said offhandedly. And Hao had already inherited the true immortal inheritance, and his cultivation level was advancing at an incredibly exaggerated pace. And Shengtian could never surpass Hao in this lifetime. The gap would only widen. Not just in Shengtian, anyone of his generation could only look up to Hao. Guan suddenly thought of the Celestial Sect legacy in his own possession. The Celestial Sect legacy was also a kind of celestial Dao destiny, which could grant longevity but at the expense of one's freedom, being manipulated by the heavenly Dao. Should he let Shengtian accept the Celestial Sect legacy? Never mind whether he could catch up or not. There was no need to trouble Hao further. No matter how many disciples he had, Hao was still the disciple Guan valued and anticipated the most. And Shengtian could not compare to Hao in his heart. Hao was the first disciple he had truly cultivated with all his heart from a young age. Compared with Shengtian, Guan was more concerned about Jiang Shi. Since Jiang Shi had entered Profound Valley, he had been diligent and hard-working. Initially, his eagerness to join Profound Valley at all costs, even possibly causing the death of Lu Jiujia, had left a poor impression on Guan. But over the years, Jiang Shi had proven his loyalty over a millennium, and Guan had begun to place great importance on him. Unlike the visible strength of Shengtian, Guan felt Jiang Shi had more potential. This young man deliberately held back against opponents of the same realm, aiming to highlight Shengshen's strength. Guan even sensed a trace of Dao intent emanating from him. Not yet at the Nirvana realm, Jiang Shi had already begun to comprehend the way of cause and effect. Judging by his talent for enlightenment, this young man was a prodigy of the millennium. Of course, this was also related to the cultivation of Dao intent by Guan ever since he discovered Jiang Shi had an extraordinary perception talent for the way of cause and effect. Guan had been intentionally and unintentionally exposing him to the power of cause and effect. Indeed, it's a far cry. Speaking of which, it's been a long time since I've heard any news about Hao. Is he in seclusion? The blood prison great saint asked with curiosity, believing his master must know Hao's whereabouts. Guan did not answer immediately, as someone was flying in. A figure emerged from Profound Valley. It was an Exian. An Exian landed beside Guan, excitedly saying, "Master, there's an immortal god appearing in the human world." Immortal god? The blood prison great saint turned to look at an Xian, and both Jiang Shi and Enchanting, who were engaged in combat, also turned their attention. Without turning his head, Guan asked, "What immortal god? Tell me more." An Xian sat down beside him and said, "An immortal has descended, claiming that by collecting 9 true copies of the theory of heaven, one can comprehend the celestial Tao record, inherit the true immortal legacy and one's destiny pattern." The blood prison great saint couldn't help asking, "What immortal has descended? And so quietly?" In the past, battles between Guan and those powerhouses had been earth-shattering. In the blood prison great saint's view, if a real immortal came, the commotion wouldn't be small. Chapter 480. Pillar of the Human World, the so-called immortal cultivation true immortal inheritance? Guan guessed it was very likely to be true. He thought about the inheritance that LV gave him, which included the inheritance of the celestial Tao immortal position. And the ultimate extreme in one's life was also due to the refusal of the position among the immortal gods, which led to the demise of one's body and the extinguishment of their path. Is the theory of heaven influenced by the meddling of immortal gods? Even reaching the Tao fruit realm, it is hard to catch a glimpse of an immortal god. They are ethereal, and seldom are there rumors of them in the cosmos. Blood prison great saint and an Xian began discussing the theory of heaven and the true immortal inheritance. For cultivators, the immortal gods possessed an irresistible allure. Isn't the purpose of immortal cultivation to ascend to immortality? Once it was believed that the immortal dynasty was the ultimate goal, but later it was discovered that they were merely beings who had reached the immortal Tao realm. The true immortal gods are beyond imagination. Guan was also curious about the nature of the force to which the immortal gods belonged. What immense entity was it? However, he didn't intend to delve into the true immortal inheritance for the time being. If he touched upon cause and effect, even if he refused to ascend to immortality, he would encounter endless troubles. This news had already spread to the supreme sect, causing a stir that could be imagined throughout the world. There's going to be more blood and carnage. Guan silently thought, having an authentic copy of the theory of heaven in his hands, which made him somewhat anticipate what the future held. Not everything was he inclined to deduce. He now preferred to keep some mysteries for the future, for even with his intervention, new variables would arise. Jiang Shi and Enchanting practiced against each other for a while until Guan called a halt. Master and disciple approached Guan, and after briefly pointing out a few things, he departed. Although Jiang Shi possessed extraordinary talents in perceiving fate, it didn't mean Guan had to cultivate him. With many geniuses by Guan's side, if everyone were to be given key development, how could one enjoy life? On the way back, an Xian inquired about Guan's opinion on the true immortal inheritance. Guan said that to discern the true from the false, one must experience it firsthand. Blood prison great saint wondered whether his master might be a true immortal descended to the human realm. To this day, no one knew of the master's origin. Blood prison great saint gazed at Guan's retreating figure with eyes full of reverence and anticipation. Whether this life would achieve the Tao rested on just how strong the master was. Guan heard the thoughts of blood prison great saint and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. 100 years passed in a flash. Chen Luo, with his white hair, stood on a cliff, gazing at the continuous mountains ahead. Above, there were more cultivators flying back and forth than birds, most of them heading in the same direction. Supreme Sect. Chen Luo's face, aged with time, showed a nervous yet hopeful expression. After so many years, he had finally arrived at the Supreme Sect. From the sacred domain to the Supreme Sect, it took him over 100 years, with quite a few benefactors helping him along the way. Otherwise, he would have perished en route. A century of tempering had made him more composed, devoid of his previous impetuosity. The Supreme Sect, the leading sect of the Taitsong continent, is also the pillar of this pure land in the human world. It is said that the Supreme Sect harbors immortals, who once saved all living beings. Some call him the supporting Tao Sword Venerable, others the hidden sage. Regardless of how one imagines him, it is undeniable that his existence has indeed brought peace to all living beings. A voice came from behind Chen Luo. He saw a cyan-robed Taoist holding a horsetail whisk approaching. The Taoist appeared to be in his 40s, his beard fluttering in the wind, with a small crane perched on his right shoulder. Chen Luo turned his head to see him approaching and asked, "Senior, now that we have arrived at the Supreme Sect, Can you tell me why you have come? Without this senior's help, he feared it would take tens or even hundreds of years more to reach the Taitsong continent. The cyan-robed Taoist looked into the distance and said, I am here seeking the hope that will end an era of turmoil. Are you speaking of the supporting Tao sword venerable? Chen Luo asked, puzzled. The cyan-robed Taoist shook his head and said, You've heard of the theory of heaven, right? There's an authentic copy hidden within the supreme sect. Chen Luo revealed a look of surprise. Just as he was about to ask more, the cyan-robed Taoist waved his horsetail whisking him into the breeze and toward the outer sect city in the distance. Chen Luo stood amid the wind, reining in his curiosity. He had not forgotten the purpose of his journey. All these years, his thoughts had constantly turned to his wife. The Saint King had sent him to the supreme sect without telling him what to do next, so he was quite at a loss. Without exchange of words, the two arrived at the outer sect city and queued to enter. Just after entering, a man approached Chen Luo and said, Are you Chen Luo from the sacred domain? The speaker was none other than Long Qing, who was curiously sizing up Chen Luo. Upon hearing this, Chen Luo became instantly excited and quickly raised his hand, asking, I am Chen Luo, and I have met you, fellow Taoist. May I ask if fellow Taoist has been arranged by the Saint King? Saint King. Long Qing shook his head with a smile and then said, Come with me. He was also curious about why his master wanted to meet this person, and he prepared to understand him properly on the way. Long Qing turned and left, with Chen Luo hastily following. The cyan-robed Taoist watched Long Qing's retreating back, his eyes flickering, as he pondered something unknown. Meanwhile, outside the Third Medicine Valley, in a mountain forest, Guan was sparring in swordsmanship with Chen Chuan. Using fingers as his sword, he easily caught all of Chen Chuan's sword techniques. At 111, Chen Chuan possessed the cultivation level of the 6th layer of the divinity transformation realm, dressed in black, wielding a treasure sword, spirited and vigorous. At the age of 50, he was taken away by Guan, and after 61 years of comprehending the sword Dao by Guan's side, his true strength was far more terrifying than his realm suggested. He had become a famously talented individual of the Third Medicine Valley, and although no one knew his background, the fact that Guan had taken notice of him clearly marked him as an extraordinary genius. LV Baitian also coveted Chen Chuan, occasionally coming to inquire about his well-being. At the moment, Chen Chuan felt powerless inside as he believed that his own grasp of the sword Dao had reached the transformation realm. In a pure contest of swordsmanship, he could not find the slightest flaw in his master's technique. Guan was smiling as he watched the fierce attacks from Chen Chuan, feeling very satisfied in his heart. Isn't this the person Xiao Chuan wanted to become? After another 100 techniques, Guan said, Let's stop here. Chen Chuan sheathed his sword and then raised his sword in salute to Guan, his eyes brimming with admiration. Was this the strength of the world's #1 sword cultivator? Having been in the Third Medicine Valley for so long, he had come to realize that Guan was the supporting Dao sword venerable, who would save the world, making him feel lucky and gradually emerging from the shadows of his childhood. After offering a few pointers, Guan led Chen Chuan back toward the valley. Along the way, they saw many disciples practicing, all saluting and greeting Guan upon seeing him while looking at Chen Chuan with envy. With so many talents in Medicine Valley nowadays, few had the opportunity to be personally instructed by the master. Furthermore, Chen Chuan was someone the master had brought back from outside. Chen Chuan paid no mind to those gazes, humbly consulting his master on his doubts and discussing them one by one. They quickly returned to the valley. Long Qing and Chen Luo were waiting in front of the loft. Chen Luo looked very nervous, with the blood prison great saint scrutinizing him. From afar, Chen Chuan glanced at Chen Luo only once before withdrawing his mind, continuing to contemplate the sword Dao. Having lost his father as an infant, he had no memories of him. Long Qing, upon seeing Guan, hastily greeted, Hello, master. Chen Luo then looked towards Guan and Chen Chuan, his eyes lighting up, not because he recognized Chen Chuan, but because he was dazzled by Guan's appearance and demeanor. Such an immortal existed in the world. Guan arrived in front of Long Qing and asked him to take his younger disciple away. Immediately, Long Qing left with Chen Chuan, arm in arm, leaving Chen Luo alone, nervously facing Guan. Let's talk upstairs. Guan said with a smile and then led the way upstairs. Chen Luo took a deep breath and followed Guan's steps. Once inside, he closed the door and walked to the desk, before suddenly kneeling down. "Please, Senior, save my wife," Chen Luo said through clenched teeth, without showing much excitement, as he was trying hard to control his emotions. Guan looked at him and asked, "What have you gained from your experiences over these years, and have you come to any realizations?" Chen Luo looked up, confronting Guan's gaze. Prepared for this moment, he replied, "Yes, people other than me suffer in this world, and I am not the most tormented among them. Besides my wife, I have parents and a son to care for. I shouldn't be so selfish, so impulsive." Guan shook his head slightly and said, "You're wrong. There is one more thing you've overlooked. Please enlighten me, Senior." Chen Luo spoke cautiously, while also wondering what he had missed. Guan's gaze turned indifferent, posing an immense pressure on Chen Luo, who said, "You're fortunate to be born in the immortal cultivation world." What is immortal cultivation? It is the pursuit of the power to overturn all tragedies. Faced with the death of your wife, you should transform your emotions into the drive for immortal cultivation. Should you ascend to immortality, you very well may save your wife. Chapter 481. The destiny pattern that surpasses all beings. Listening to Guan's words, Chen Luo's face flushed with both shame and a lack of confidence. "But, even if I continue to cultivate now, will it be enough?" Chen Luo asked through gritted teeth. He had once been at the Mahayana realm in his cultivation level, and he naturally understood the power of immortal cultivation. But his wife had died right before his eyes, and not even the Saint King could stop it. That was the Saint King, a powerful being the likes of which his Chen family had never seen since its establishment. Guan stared at him and said, "I can save your wife from her tragedy, but future tragedies must be prevented by yourself. I'm telling you in advance, your son's destiny is not simple. Troubles will follow him endlessly, and it was because of him that your wife died. You now have two choices. One is to sever the causal connection with your son, and I can make it so you have no relationship with him at all. The other is to continue being his father, but there will be no more opportunities to give up in the future. Whatever you choose, I will save your wife." Upon hearing this, Chen Luo's expression changed drastically, and his hands clenched into fists on his thighs. Guan could hear the struggle in Chen Luo's heart. His many thoughts, some of which were dark, but Guan paid them no mind. Humans are complex, and hearts have their dark places, but as long as the choice made is good, there's no need to discuss the heart. The room fell into silence. After a long while, Chen Luo let out a sigh and said, "Senior, I wish to protect him for life. The father-son bond is hard to cultivate in 100 lifetimes. I should not escape my duty. I believe my wife would have thought the same. I will strive to cultivate, protect him, support him, even if it costs me my life." Guan, expressionless, asked, "No regrets?" Chen Luo, no longer hesitating, smiled openly and said, "No regrets." Guan showed a smile and said, "Then go and cultivate well." With that, he didn't wait for Chen Luo to react and, waving his sleeve, whisked Chen Luo away. The furnishings in the room shook, but the door was not disturbed. In an instant, Chen Luo found himself at the dojo of the Hidden Spirit Palace. Guan did not watch the warm scene of the couple reuniting. Letting the deep-sea dragon carp suffer was enough. But with his experience, he probably only found it interesting. Guan raised his hand, took out the Theory of Heaven, and placed it on the table. Then he started perusing the book. The sunlight outside the window gradually dimmed. Guan still did not put away the Theory of Heaven. Chen Luo's arrival and disappearance did not attract attention in the Third Medicine Valley. Only Long Qing asked Guan about it curiously. A month later, Guan, riding the Blood Prison Great Saint, returned to the Third Medicine Valley. Today, they had visited the End of the World Valley, and both were in good spirits. "Ha ha ha, that LV Xian overestimated himself, thought he could compete with me. The moment I used my full strength, he was down." The Blood Prison Great Saint, transformed into an ox, snorted, very proud. Within the barrier drawn by Guan, the Blood Prison Great Saint and LV Xian sparred with all their might. The loose immortal realm Blood Prison Great Saint laughed last. Not to mention that the Blood Prison Great Saint's cultivation level was higher. Actually, his lifespan before reaching Nirvana was also greater. Fighting to such a degree, Guan felt that LV Xian hadn't lost. worthy of being the top person of the future immortal cultivation realm. Guan chatted nonchalantly with the blood prison great saint, while his divine sense watched over the world, observing how those old acquaintances struggled in life. Liya was being chased, in a critical situation, this youngster hanging by a thread, and yet he was with a mother and daughter. Yu Yingying was listening to teachings. The island master of that island claimed to be the immortal of eternal life, willing to bestow the longevity technique to those fated, but in reality, he was an evil cultivator who did no good. And Hao was still sitting in front of that celestial Tao golden core, cultivating heavenly divine skills, his power soaring. Lu Lingjun was still in the Buddhist sect of the Sea of Suffering, recently given a tough problem by Buddha. She was still sitting in meditation, thinking hard. Jiang Qiong was undergoing solitary trials. This fellow, indeed from a demon Tao background, wanted to steal another sect's divine skills. Guan also saw Hao Long reigning supreme on a continent dominated by the demon race, though his second-in-command was secretly plotting to kill him and take his true blood. Other old acquaintances were each living their eventful lives. Guan would not intervene if he could avoid it. Being an onlooker also felt quite good. At that moment, a cyan-robed Taoist came before the blood prison great saint and raised his hand in greeting, saying, "I am He Qingsong, and I have seen the sword venerable." The blood prison great saint suddenly felt displeased and said, "Never heard of you, move aside, or I might just stomp you to death." He had seen all of Guan's friends, and having never seen this person, he naturally would not show courtesy. He Qingsong, scolded by the blood prison great saint, did not get angry but instead looked calmly at Guan, which only made the blood prison great saint even angrier. Guan looked at He Qingsong and asked with a smile, "Is there something you need?" He Qingsong, 8th floor of the Nirvana realm 6420/20,000/20,000. Ordinarily at his lifespan limit, he seemed unremarkable, but his body was enveloped with a strong celestial Tao destiny that made Guan very interested. He was entwined with the celestial Tao destiny to the extent that Guan couldn't deduce his cause and effect or his destiny. He Qingsong, neither servile nor overbearing, said, "I wonder what Sword Venerable thinks of this world. Do you intend to become an immortal god who protects all living beings?" After Guan spoke, Blood Prison Great Saint fell silent, casting a suspicious glance towards He Qingsong. Could this person have an extraordinary origin? To him, He Qingsong was just a common cultivator of the Nirvana realm. In the Supreme Sect nowadays, being at the Nirvana realm was not uncommon. Years before, a celestial and earthly immortal had become an elder of the Supreme Sect, and it had been quite the affair. Guan shook his head and said, "I have no particular thoughts, nor do I wish to become an immortal god. I merely wish to live peacefully here, savoring the passage of time." He Qingsong immediately followed up, "If that is so, why then, would Sword Venerable keep the theory of heaven?" Theory of heaven? Blood Prison Great Saint was taken aback, unaware that their master had a piece of the theory of heaven. Far away, before the mountain of 10,000 swords where Zhu Luo Sword Monarch was meditating an enlightenment on his sword skills, he opened his eyes and his gaze fell on He Qingsong. This aura, could it be? Zhu Luo Sword Monarch frowned, a bad premonition rising in his heart. Guan asked with a smile, "Do you want the theory of heaven?" He Qingsong replied, "I do not wish for it, merely that its presence in the hands of Sword Venerable means the great fortune seekers of this world cannot obtain the true immortal inheritance. Your Tao practice should not intervene in the operations of the world." Guan looked at him as if trying to see through him, but He Qingsong was not intimidated and met Guan's gaze. Blood Prison Great Saint's eyes flashed coldly upon hearing He Qingsong not addressing Guan with respect. And Xian, Long Qing, and Chen Chuan noticed this scene and approached, with other disciples noticing someone was obstructing their master and something seemed amiss, drawing more of them closer. Long Qing moved the fastest. He arrived in front of He Qingsong, sizing him up and saying, "It's you. I've seen you before. What is your identity that you dare to be so disrespectful to my master?" He Qingsong did not answer, and just quietly stared at Guan, waiting for his response. Guan, evidently interested, asked, "Have you come for the sake of all living beings?" He Qingsong replied, "I have come for the operation of the world. This past month, living among the cultivators of the Supreme Sect, I have come to know your character and actions. If you truly have a compassionate and merciful heart, you should release the theory of heaven to allow this realm to welcome its savior sooner. This too is the will of the heavenly Tao." Guan raised his right hand, palm up, and the theory of heaven materialized in it. He looked towards the distance at Zhu Xi and waved her over. Zhu Xi hesitated for a moment but, steeling herself, approached. He Qingsong, following Gu An's gaze, had a slight change of expression as his pupils dilated. How could it be her? He Qingsong wrinkled his brow, thinking in astonishment. Zhu Xi came to Blood Prison Great Saint's side and raised her hand in greeting to Guan. Guan smiled and said, "Disciple, this person here wishes your master to hand over the theory of heaven. What do you think I should do?" Zhu Xi had heard the conversation, and although the theory of heaven was hers, she feared causing trouble. "It is entirely up to you, master," Zhu Xi respectfully said. Guan laughed and looked back at He Qingsong, asking with a smile, "Could my disciple possibly be the savior?" He Qingsong's face turned awkward, and he didn't directly answer, seemingly on guard against Zhu Xi. Everyone else could see it too and confusedly scrutinized Zhu Xi. Zhu Xi didn't have much presence at the Third Medicine Valley, and the disciples hadn't expected her to have another identity. Guan continued, "It seems you too cannot see through the will of heaven." He casually threw the theory of heaven to Zhu Xi, who instinctively caught it. Guan patted Blood Prison Great Saint on the shoulder, signaling him to move forward. This time, He Qingsong no longer stopped Blood Prison Great Saint but looked at Zhu Xi with a complex expression, his face cycling through clouds and sunlight. The gazes of others shifted back and forth between Zhu Xi and He Qingsong, their minds filled with curiosity and confusion. Seeing that the situation was unfavorable, Zhu Xi turned to leave. "Your Highness, would you like to restore your destiny that reigns above all beings?" He Qingsong suddenly called out, stopping Zhu Xi. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, hearing these words, seemed to have a realization, his eyes displaying shock, and he muttered to himself, "So, it's really her." Chapter 482 Shengtun, Your Highness? Guan, Longqing, Chen Chuan, and the others looked at Zhu Xi with puzzled expressions. Just how significant was this woman's background? Especially Chen Chuan, who, despite having been in the Third Medicine Valley for decades, didn't have an in-depth understanding of the valley because he was devoted to the Sword Dao, spending almost all his time cultivating. In his eyes, Third Medicine Valley was a place where hidden dragons and crouching tigers lay. He Qingsong, who always spoke of all living beings to appear detached and extraordinary, was calling Zhu Xi Your Highness. Just who was Zhu Xi? Suddenly, Chen Chuan felt he had been too rash and perhaps should pay more attention to his surroundings. Zhu Xi, with her back to He Qingsong, bowed her head, tightly gripping the theory of heaven. It was clear she was struggling psychologically. After hesitating for a while, Zhu Xi still left holding the theory of heaven, leaving the onlookers even more confused. He Qingsong watched her departing figure and didn't speak further to hold her back. Instead, he furrowed his brows and fell into deep thought. "Disperse now, disperse." An Exian spoke up, waving his hands at the disciples gathered around from all directions. Seeing this, the disciples could only scatter with confusion and curiosity still in their minds. Longqing approached He Qingsong and curiously asked, "What is Zhu Zai's background? Tell me about it." Although He Qingsong's origins were unclear, he never feared danger within the Third Medicine Valley. He Qingsong glanced at Longqing and said, "She has many backgrounds, and you should have heard of her title in one lifetime. She is known as the Shengtian." After saying that, He Qingsong turned and left. Shengtian? Longqing was stunned, as were Guan, Chen Chuan, and others, including some disciples who hadn't walked far. They were shocked too. The name of Shengtian was known by all. Who didn't know it belonged to the strongest being in the Holy Court, the mightiest in the celestial spirit great world? Whether Shengtian or supporting Dao Sword Venerable was stronger was hard to judge for all living beings. After the disappearance of Shengtian, supporting Dao Sword Venerable emerged, and the two never confronted each other. Of course, those of higher realms all knew that supporting Dao Sword Venerable far surpassed Shengtian in cultivation level. Regardless, Shengtian made an indescribable impression on the beings of the celestial spirit great world. Many life forms equated Shengtian with Zongtian. Blood Prison Great Saint looked up and couldn't help asking, "Master, is Zhu Xi Shengtun?" Guan sat on his back and said nonchalantly, "Who knows? In any case, it's irrelevant to you and me. The one and only primordial swallowing yuan body." No wonder Shangtian was so powerful that she suppressed the entire great heaven and earth, deterring the celestial demon race. Guan silently thought it was interesting. He could see that He Qingsong didn't want him to interfere with the evolution of heaven and earth. He Qingsong must be controlled by some will, specifically coming to test him, but he hadn't expected to encounter Zhu Shi. Guan himself also didn't want to frequently interfere with the transformation of heaven and earth. His previous intervention was only because the silent destruction god emperor had targeted him and Long Qing. No matter how the battle continued, he wouldn't care. He just needed to protect himself and those around him. To extinguish 99% of all living beings. Guan looked up at the vault of heaven, his thoughts drifting. 99% seemed like a lot, but in the grand scheme of the entire celestial spirit great world, after 99% were extinguished, the remaining beings would still be vast. From another perspective, the heavenly Tao still left mercy and a sliver of hope, with the current strife providing a chance for beings to fight for a new lease on life. Compared to the transformation of heaven and earth, Guan was now more looking forward to his own Tao practice. Being heaven-encompassing free immortal wasn't enough. He needed to keep increasing his strength, to surpass the true form of the silent destruction god emperor, surpass the celestial spirit god, surpass the immortal gods and the cosmic order hidden in the mist. The news about Zhu Shi being Shangtian didn't spread. The supreme sect acted swiftly, but Zhu Zai's life changed because of it. Every time she left her house, she encountered many people crowding around her. Even great cultivators from the Holy Court took residence in the Third Medicine Valley. Guan stood in front of the window, looking out at the bustling Medicine Valley, and remarked, "There are more and more people." Shen Zhan, who was preparing to paint, turned his head to look at him and asked, "Is the crowd good or bad for you?" "I used to think it was good, but recently not so much." Guan replied, his gaze deep, pondering something unknown. Upon hearing this, Shen Zhan appeared contemplative. The brush she had been hesitating to lay down finally made its mark. After observing the scenery of Medicine Valley for a while, Guan turned around and walked to the desk to look at Shen Zhan's painting. It was a landscape painting depicting mountains with waterfalls, buildings next to the waterfall, and a medicine garden below, where someone was sowing seeds. Not far away, a cow and a fat rat were chasing each other. "Are you painting me?" Guan asked curiously. Shen Zhan replied, I don't know why, but such a scene suddenly appeared in my mind, becoming increasingly clear. This could be where you'll live in the future." Guan didn't respond. His gaze rested on the cliff above the waterfall. He saw a figure in white, seemingly a woman, looking down at the medicine garden from atop the cliff. He couldn't help but wonder, who was this woman? He didn't ask, nor did he try to calculate it. When Shen Zhen finished the painting, she suddenly exclaimed, "Oh, how come I've painted a woman? Who is this?" Guan rolled his eyes and said, "You painted it and you're asking me?" Shen Zhen picked up the painting, remarking, "I always feel like this painting is from the far, far future." Guan teased, "What? You can predict the future now?" "Don't say that, it's actually possible. Many of the images are things I haven't experienced, and they don't match the present or the past. Maybe I have begun to achieve enlightenment after you taught me, but what I've achieved is not the way of cause and effect," Shen Zhen said seriously. Guan smiled but did not argue. Shen Zhen indeed had already begun to step into the initial understanding of the great Tao. What she contemplated was not the way of cause and effect, but the way of fate. Having stepped into enlightenment, Shen Zhen had surpassed all living beings. Many experts of the immortal Tao spent their entire lives unable to achieve enlightenment, including the divine thought true immortal. Shen Zhen continued to share her dreams, revealing her insights into the way of fate. Guan listened intently, understanding that even though his cultivation level was higher, he might still find inspiration in her insights. Outside the supreme sect, on a mountaintop, a man in a black robe stood with his sword in his arms, his white hair fluttering in the wind. Beside him stood a dozen cultivators, each exuding an extraordinary aura and holding various magical treasures. "My lord, the supreme sect is just ahead. Is the supporting Tao Sword Venerable really not going to intervene in this opportunity?" A masked woman asked the man in the black robe, nervously. They had lived for many years, having experienced the supporting Tao Sword Venerable's struggles against the profound desolate demon god and the silent destruction god emperor, and held a deep reverence for him from the bottom of their hearts. An elder spoke up, The supporting Tao Sword Venerable has released the theory of heaven as a statement of intent. We just need to ensure that we don't harm the innocent. The rest echoed his sentiments, their words filled with a longing for the theory of heaven. The man in the black robe's face was indifferent. He spoke calmly. Once we arrive at the Supreme Sect, we must first visit someone. He should be aware of the supporting Tao Sword Venerable's stance. As the words fell, a rainbow light swept across the celestial vault above him, quickly disappearing into the horizon. The masked woman frowned and asked, "Was that the 9 Extreme Saint God?" The man in the black robe replied, "Indeed it was. I didn't expect such an arrogant man to also pursue the theory of heaven. It seems he now knows his celestial mandate." He leapt up, turning into a wisp of black mist, soaring towards the horizon, with the others quickly following suit. Meanwhile, in the third Medicine Valley, within a forest, Zhu Shi stood face to face with Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, who looked with interest at the theory of heaven in her hand. "Xingtan, do you really wish to yield this opportunity to me? The Sword Venerable has entrusted it to you. Perhaps he sees potential in you." Zhu Shi shook her head. "I am not the Xingtan you speak of. All I know is that I can't keep it safe now. Since the Sword Venerable does not wish to deal with the repercussions, I shall give it to you. You are strong enough. Perhaps you can claim the true immortal inheritance." Hearing this, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch sneered derisively, and with a wave of his right hand, the theory of heaven was drawn into his possession through the air. "Xingtan, why are you so cowardly in this life? Is it because you haven't awakened your memory? But that shouldn't be the reason. No matter how many times one reincarnates, one's nature doesn't change," Zhu Luo Sword Monarch taunted. Zhu Shi didn't answer, but instead, she exhaled deeply. Seeing her so meek, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch found it dull. He followed with a leap, turning into a beam of sword light and vanishing. "I am Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, holding the theory of heaven. Those who seek immortal fate shall challenge me." Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's domineering voice echoed between heaven and earth. At the same time, a vast sword intent erupted from afar. Zhu Shi turned her head to look, but Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's figure was nowhere to be seen. She thought to herself, "Luckily there are still fools. No, I must leave the Supreme Sect." She glanced in the direction of Guan's pavilion, hesitating for a moment before offering a salute to Guan from across the distance. "Master, forgive me. I'm not only saving myself but also don't want to cause you any trouble." With that, Zhu Shi didn't look back as she ran towards the valley exit. Chapter 483. The True Immortal Inside the Attic. Guan was reading a book, his divine sense watching Zhu Shi leave the third Medicine Valley. This girl's temperament. Guan didn't quite know what to say about it. Could he really call her a fellow practitioner when he himself wasn't this timid? He didn't forcibly stop Zhu Zai's decision. Perhaps he truly could protect her. But these past few years, Zhu Shi had clearly been uncomfortable, especially after her identity as Shengtian was revealed. Her heart was tormented, and Guan could hear the anxious voices within her. "So be it. Let her go then. After all, she's a Saint Heaven reincarnation. She should be able to turn danger into safety. But does she think that I can't resist the heavenly Tao?" Guan thought to himself, not with a sense of regret but pondering. He wasn't arrogant enough to think he was invincible. There was still so much he couldn't do, and every time he encountered such things, he felt motivated. He could keep saving the celestial spirit great world, but he couldn't yet see through the heavenly Tao behind the scenes. The heaven-encompassing free immortal might be able to do as he pleased within the universe, but only within the universe. What lies beyond the universe? Guan continued reading while pondering these questions. He didn't attempt to divine Zhu Zai's future fortunes. Ever since the incident with Xiaochuan's reincarnation, Head tried not to predict the future as much as possible, to avoid knowing too much and wanting to change things, bringing about more variables. Actually, not knowing the future might be a good thing. At least it leaves room for anticipation. Guan had sought too much foresight before, and it made him feel life was dull. Perhaps in the next era, I can consider staying somewhere else. Guan silently thought, the corners of his mouth curving upwards. He, too, started looking forward to the future, to a completely new life. As autumn gave way to winter, the snow blanketed the land in white. In the mountain god temple within the North Sea mountain ridge, Profound mysterious Zhenren stood on the eaves, gazing at the distant battle in the sky. The fierce wind raged, the forest shook violently, wave after wave, a sight of magnificent grandeur. Yet profound mysterious Zhenren's figure was immovable, his eyes shining brightly. Despite having stood guard here for over 1,000 years, making his Tao heart even more steadfast, deep down, he still harbored the blood of one who longed for power. He was the most talented individual in the history of Mount Sanqing. It was just too bad that Li Ya had stolen his thunder, becoming the most celebrated prodigy of the Li family and Mount Sanqing. Nevertheless, staying here hadn't halted his progress. With the help of the mountain god, he had achieved nirvana and stood on the eaves with the demeanor of an immortal. Inside the courtyard, a Taoist child around 12 or 13 years old squatted in front of the pill furnace, fanning the flame. Wisps of blue smoke drifted up. From time to time, he wiped sweat from his brow or looked up at profound mysterious Zhenren on the eaves. After a good while, the Taoist child couldn't help but ask, "Master, what are you watching? Isn't this fierce wind just a natural wind of the world?" The forest was dense, and he could not see the situation at the horizon, thinking it might rain soon. Profound mystery Zhenren replied, "It's nothing, your teacher was just watching two sparrows fighting. As for this wind, there are plenty of strange winds in the North Sea mountain ridge. You'll encounter them yourself later on." The Taoist child's eyes widened, and he asked curiously, "Such a big wind, and there are still sparrows fighting? I've never seen sparrows fight before. I want to watch too. Just focus on refining your pills and don't forget why you came." Profound mystery Zhenren answered offhandedly, and the Taoist child could only pout in response. The Taoist child followed up with a question, "Master, why hasn't the mountain god appeared yet?" "He will appear when it's time. Perhaps your heart is not sincere enough." "Then, Master, is the true immortal inheritance those people talked about a few days ago real? Why don't they believe in the mountain god?" "You'll understand when you grow up. Many people are not in pursuit of the responsibilities of immortal gods, they just seek the power of immortal gods. You should also think carefully about what kind of person you truly want to become." Profound mystery Zhenren spoke calmly, his tone like a breeze that settled the Taoist child's heart into tranquility. Even the persistent strong winds could not disrupt the tranquility within the courtyard. A figure entered the temple precinct. It was He Qingsong. He Qingsong first looked at profound mystery Zhenren on the eaves, then turned his gaze to the Taoist child. Profound mystery Zhenren turned his head to look at He Qingsong, frowning. For some reason, he felt very uncomfortable the moment he saw He Qingsong. That feeling was strange even to him. "Do I give you a very uncomfortable sensation?" He Qingsong asked, his gaze then drifting towards profound mystery Zhenren. Profound mystery Zhenren appeared out of nowhere in front of him, and the Taoist child looked nervously at He Qingsong, thinking to himself, "Could this person be a demon? Who are you and what brings you here?" Profound mystery Zhenren stared at He Qingsong and asked. He Qingsong answered, "My name is He Qingsong. The name isn't important. The significance of this body is to act for great heaven and earth. You've been too close to an existence that conflicts with heavenly Tao, which is why you subconsciously feel hostility towards me. This is also the emotion you experience after facing the will of heavenly Tao's rejection." "What do you mean?" "Who is rejected by the heavenly Tao?" Profound mystery Zhenren frowned. He Qingsong, unchanging in expression, said, "You know very well who he is. I can only tell you that there truly are immortals in the world, but he is not one. Immortals, being high above, cannot be glimpsed by mortal spirits. You've already entered the nirvana realm and are on the path to pursue immortality. You should revere immortals." Profound mystery Zhenren coldly said, "Aren't immortals supposed to be the protectors of all beings? Why must they clearly delineate themselves from sentient beings? That's just the thinking of mortals. Who said immortals have to protect sentient beings? Immortals create living beings, create heaven and earth, create everything. In the eyes of immortals, all things are equal. Your current resentment is misguided. The current suffering of sentient beings is due to their excessive pressure on heaven and earth, which is the self-protective consciousness of heaven and earth. The unending calamities are just because heaven and earth want to unload the burden. Sentient beings are that burden. and immortals recognize and support heaven and earth in shedding that burden. The words of He Qing made profound mystery Zenran's face turn ugly, and they rocked his Dao heart. Are immortals really like that? He Qing lifted his right hand, and a broken piece of white jade appeared in it. He spoke with sincere gravity. You have a heart of great compassion, rare in this world. You are indeed destined for an immortal fate. This jade is called Celestial Dao Jade. It can avert all tragedies, but it also requires a price to be paid. I gift this jade to you, whether to use it and how to use it, is up to you. As his words fell, the Celestial Dao Jade flew into the hands of Profound Mystery Zhenren. Seeing He Qing turn to leave, Profound Mystery Zhenren asked, Did you choose me because of him? Without stopping, He Qing said without looking back, Your heart yearns for the immortal, and actually, the immortal can also feel it. To use your own words to your disciple just now, you can't feel the immortal, simply because the time has not yet come. If you want to become an immortal, you must understand everything, must go through tribulations of the mortal world. Only when you are not swayed by emotions do you qualify to become an immortal. After stepping out the door, he disappeared into thin air as if he had never been there. Profound Mystery Zhenren looked down at the Celestial Dao Jade in his hand, his brow deeply furrowed. The Taoist child came to his side, curiously looking at the Celestial Dao Jade, asking, Master, is what he said the truth? Is the mountain god not an immortal? Clutching the Celestial Dao Jade, Profound Mystery Zhenren took a deep breath and said, Disciple, your teacher will teach you a lesson today. Do not listen to what others say. Look at what they do. Your faith should not be defined by anyone else. Whatever you believe in, that is the truth. Chapter 484 Savior in the Hidden Spirit Palace. Guan watched as Chen Luo sparred with the deep-sea dragon carp, his mood lifted by the words of Profound Mysterious Zhenren. He hadn't chosen the wrong person. As for He Qing, he didn't pay much attention to him because he saw many people like He Qing spreading the concept of immortality everywhere, and their numbers were growing. It was as if they had suddenly come to a realization, their bodies entwined with the celestial Tao destiny. These individuals wanted to convince all living beings of the existence of immortals and to revere the heavenly Tao. Because of this, they intended to topple everything, to knock down the images of Holy Court, supporting Tao Sword Venerable, and Young Immortal Emperor as the strongest figures in the hearts of the people, making them understand that the heavenly Tao decides everything. According to this trend, given enough time, all beings would believe in the heavenly Tao, believe in destiny, and any powerful existence would also fall in the hearts of the people, planting a seed in their minds. Apart from the heavenly Tao and immortals, nothing is eternal. There would no more be a ruling force as enduring as the Holy Court, because even those in the Holy Court would believe that it could be overturned, as long as the celestial mandate was with them. Bang! Chen Luo hit the ground hard, causing the surface to cave in and form a web-like fissure. Drained of spiritual power and chi power, his long hair was disheveled as he let out a breath, unable to stand up again. Su Ling appeared by his side. She did not pity Chen Luo but instead teased him. See, debasing your own cultivation level, even if you've recovered now, your strength isn't what it used to be. The 100 years you've missed might take even longer to make up for. Chen Luo gave a bitter smile. I really was too impulsive before. After you died, all I could think about was chasing after you. Hearing this, Su Ling's teasing mood dissolved. She squatted, helping him up. The deep-sea dragon carp, clad in white, descended from the sky. Though he still appeared feminine, his temperament was no longer as fragile as before. The arrival of Chen Luo had deepened his understanding of gender differences, and he too was in search of his true self. You are very capable. If our cultivation levels were equal, I might not be your match, the deep-sea dragon carp said earnestly. Supported by Su Ling, Chen Luo smiled bitterly. Don't comfort me, I know the gap between us is big. Don't worry, I won't be discouraged. The deep-sea dragon carp didn't know what to say, as he indeed was comforting Chen Luo. During their previous sparring, he did not feel any pressure. Guan lay in a rocking chair, beginning to close his eyes to rest. In every medicine valley and dojo, there were people cultivating, and he was anticipating the roles these individuals would play in the future. Being the heaven-encompassing free immortal, even though he couldn't directly extend the limit of others' lifespans, His influence would ensure that those around him were stronger than what their original destiny dictated. It wasn't that geniuses were gravitating toward Guen, but rather he was creating geniuses, and those who successfully approached him were great fortune seekers. He was the strongest in the celestial spirit great world, and no matter how much he remained hidden, he would influence the entire world. After chatting for a while, the deep-sea dragon carp, Chen Luo, and Su Ling began discussing their aspirations. Chen Luo simply wanted to become stronger to protect his son, Chen Chuan. Su Ling had greater ambitions. She sought revenge. The deep-sea dragon carp wanted to unify the ocean and establish order to better protect the hidden spirit palace. Beneath the blue sky, the ocean churned majestically. Zhu Luo's sword monarch stood proudly above the clouds, a book of theory of heaven floating in front of him. With a smile lift at the corners of his mouth and an arrogant expression, he looked down disdainfully at the more than a dozen people below him. Your theories of heaven now belong to me. Scram, you trash. Even if you cultivate for 10 million more years, you'll never be worthy of touching the theory of heaven. Zhu Luo's sword monarch spoke bluntly, his words filled with mockery. Despite his peaceful demeanor in the Third Medicine Valley, upon his arrival, he even dared to challenge supporting Dao's sword venerable. The faces of the man in the black robe and his followers were extremely ugly. They all had injuries, and some were even reduced to just souls. Filled with anger and fear, they glared at Zhu Luo's sword monarch. The overwhelming power of Zhu Luo's sword monarch left them in despair, and at that moment, none dared to speak. They could only look towards the man in the black robe, waiting for him to make a decision. The man in the black robe looked at the sword in his hand, its blade enveloped by a faint layer of sword qi. The sword qi was so heavy that he felt it was impossible for him in this lifetime to match Zhu Luo's sword monarch in the sword Dao. He took a deep breath and said, "Retreat." After he spoke, he turned and left, with the other cultivators hastily following him. In the distance on an island, a group of cultivators and great demons gathered, discussing the recent great battle, and Yang Jian was also present. Yang Jian gazed at Zhu Luo's sword monarch from afar, filled with emotion. What a powerful sword Dao! He even felt that Zhu Luo's sword monarch was invincible. However, the thought that Zhu Luo's sword monarch had once stayed in the Third Medicine Valley for hundreds of years made him speculate just how high his master's Dao practice might be. The setting sun shone on him, and as he descended the mountain, he gradually became dim. Upon returning to the valley, Guen stopped under the attic. Looking into the distance, Chen Chuan was sparring with Long Qing, drawing crowds of disciples to watch and cheer. Chen Chuan had a strand of celestial Dao destiny about him, very faint, hard to detect, but it sure existed. Guen glanced once and continued upstairs. Master, Elder Li of the Inner Sect Refining Hall is about to host a birthday feast for his 2000th year, and he has sent someone to invite you, the Blood Prison Great Saint spoke up. That Elder Li was an old friend of Guans for 1,000 years, and after living past 2,000 years, he would face his mortality in not too many years. I understand, replied Guen. Go and find an Exan. Tell her to prepare a gift. Okay. Blood Prison Great Saint immediately rose and went off in pursuit of Nzin's aura. After Guen went upstairs, he sat down at the desk, turning his head to look out the window. After Elder Li's passing, Guan's true friends would be very few. He was still popular now, but more people came to him for his power. When Guen became friends with Elder Li, the Third Medicine Valley was not famous, and the apparent gap in their cultivation levels wasn't significant. It started as a chance meeting at an inn, both fond of Cyan Heroes Travelogue, talking for a long time before forming a bond. A new era really is coming. Guen murmured to himself, feeling the old times and old friends fading away. He didn't dwell on it, instead, he extended his divine sense across the universe. Choosing the place for his breakthrough was what he should care about the most at the moment. As his divine sense probed, he saw a powerful force emerging in the silent extinction domain, even flying the flag of the battle court, having already ruled over a dozen great heaven and earths. The strongest in the battle court was at the late stage of the profound Yuan-free immortal realm. A minor level higher than Sword Guming had been before. They were expanding towards the direction of the celestial spirit great world, and it was only a matter of time before they would wage war. Looking around, Guan felt that to make a breakthrough, he still needed to look for a place within the reincarnation vortex. The reincarnation vortex connected to many great heaven and earths located in this universe, just that they were very far apart. However, the reincarnation vortex also led to the land of reincarnation, the destination of souls, unreachable even for free immortals. Nevertheless, the heaven-encompassing free immortal could capture traces of the reincarnation. Otherwise, for the next breakthrough, go to the land of reincarnation? As this thought took hold, Guan's eyes brightened even more. The descendant of the Long clan is indeed in the celestial spirit great world, and he will vie for the celestial mandate. A voice, ancient and strong, resounded. This voice was unmistakably He Chingsong's, but it was stronger, as though a supreme deity proclaiming the laws of the world to all living beings. The seated figure opened his eyes and looked mocking. So it's you. I hadn't expected you to still not have given up the chase. The vast eyes in the void continued. Yi Tianji, we could join forces. Perhaps the people of the Long clan are hiding under the employ of the supporting Dao Sword Venerable. If so, you cannot avoid dealing with him. An entity even the silent destruction god Emperor suffered a setback from. I promote the celestial mandate, and you eradicate the enemy's remnants. Our actions do not conflict. The figure referred to as Yi Tianji remained unflustered, merely staring calmly at those eyes, his thoughts inscrutable. The void returned to silence once more. Unless you tell me exactly who the descendant of the Long clan is, I shall not readily believe you, Yi Tianji finally spoke. The vast eyes in the void narrowed slightly, hearing Yi Tianji continue. But you have another option. You could concede the celestial Dao Golden Core to me. I might then consider assisting you. The celestial Dao Golden Core. The expression in the eyes of the void suddenly turned cold, while Yi Tianji closed his eyes again. The winged man on the grand hall could not help but smile, looking mockingly at the vast eyes in the void, waiting for a decision. For a long time. The voice of the void's great eye spoke. Not now. When the celestial Dao Golden Core appears, I will not stop you but let you enter. Upon hearing this, Yi Tianji's face revealed a defiant smile. Another 30 years had passed. At the age of 1943, Guan was playing chess with the nine-fingered divine monarch, holding the green hero travelogue in one hand and a chess piece in the other, his eyes on the book. The nearly defeated nine-fingered divine monarch raised his eyes to Guan and said dissatisfied, Do you need to treat our chess game so dismissively? Guan replied, Please, you're the one who insisted on playing with me. Although profound celestial intent was a Nirvana realm great cultivator, his reputation had been drowned out by the increasing number of great cultivators in the supreme sect. He seldom returned from his travels and would send Guan books from time to time. Guan was reading firsthand new releases, and by the time he finished, the Green Hero travelogue would only then start circulating in the market. This volume of the story was particularly brilliant. The hero encountered a woman with deep-seated enmity toward him. They chased each other at sea and ultimately encountered an attack from a great demon. Both were poisoned and temporarily lost their cultivation levels. They ended up stranded on a deserted island, entangled in love and hate. Even without other characters, watching their interactions with the island's demons was also very intriguing. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch holds 8 volumes of the Theory of Heaven and is just missing the last one. He waits inside his Zai Sword City, saying that if he loses, he will surrender all 8 volumes. Yet, even so, the final volume of the Theory of Heaven has not revealed itself. The nine-fingered divine monarch sighed and his face was filled with admiration when he mentioned Zhu Luo Sword Monarch. His realm was worlds apart from Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, which is why he held such reverence. Furthermore, having played chess with him before, he felt a connection and especially paid attention to news about Zhu Luo Sword Monarch. Guan casually asked, What? Are you very interested in the true immortal inheritance? You could challenge him too. What if you won? How could I possibly win? I'm just at the wandering immortal realm, while he exists at the 9th heaven of the immortal path. I could cultivate for tens of thousands of years and still might not reach his level, said the nine-fingered divine monarch, his eyes wide. Seeing that he did not want to continue the chess game and was changing the subject, Guan said irritably, Tens of thousands of years? Do you think you can live that long? The nine-fingered divine monarch was so annoyed that he stood up and left with a flick of his sleeve. Guan curled his lip and thought to himself that he really lacked sportsmanship in chess. He stood up and walked towards the outside of the dojo. Along the way, disciples and cultivators who saw him all paid their respects. He walked toward the mouth of the valley, where a woman was pacing at this moment. This woman was Yi Lan's disciple, Yi Qingxue. Nearly 1,000 years old, she had reached the divinity transformation realm cultivation level. 2,000 years ago, she could have roamed freely across the continent, but in today's supreme sect, a cultivation level of divinity transformation realm was not as prestigious as some exceptionally talented new disciples. Dressed in a yellow robe, Yi Qingxue saw Gu An's figure from afar, and she was immediately filled with joy. Just as she was about to step forward, she hesitated again. As a child, she had been disrespectful and hostile towards Guan. She felt that her master, being so powerful, shouldn't have to curry favor with Guan. But ever since she realized that Guan was the supporting Dao Sword Venerable, she understood how ridiculous she had been. Because of this, she dared not see Guan anymore. Since her master's death, she had kept this relationship secret and did not speak of it. Apart from the Elder Hall, no one knew of her relation to Guan. Seeing Guan walking towards her, Yi Qingxue felt nervous and apprehensive. Could it be that her uncle master had foreseen her coming, and had specifically come to meet her? Hundreds of years ago, noble families within the sect wouldn't dare scheme against anyone linked to him by karma. But now, those in the upper echelons of these families believed he feared the heavenly Tao and would no longer take action. Of course, they still acted cautiously, not harming Yi Qingxue. If supporting Dao Sword Venerable really decided to act, they could pretend they were unaware of this connection. This family, surnamed Qin, held formidable power within the supreme sect. Even the leader of the subsect bore the name Qin. They had mastered an evil skill, collecting 99 gifted individuals destined for great fortunes and transferring all their destiny and talent to another individual, creating the strongest of the Qin family to compete for the celestial mandate. The old ancestor of the Qin family was a divine immortal of wondrous dharma, with inconspicuous cultivation level but well known by many for their possession of celestial and earthly immortals. The bustling scenes caused by the Qin family allowing these immortals into the supreme sect had greatly boosted their reputation. The evil skill of the Qin family was naturally a secret, and they dared not practice such deeds within the supreme sect. Therefore, Yi Qingxue's disciple had been transferred to an isolated island overseas. After Yi Qingxue finished speaking, she looked at Guan with pleading eyes. To her, the Qin family was a colossal entity that could not be shaken. She had mobilized all her connections, even reporting to the law enforcement hall, but all efforts vanished without a trace. She had also received warnings, but for some reason, the Qin family hadn't taken action against her. Guan continued forward, his gaze fixed on the path ahead, the breeze fluttering his robe. He spoke, "Qingxue, do you feel that the changes within the supreme sect are significant? Are the changes in this world significant?" Yi Qingxue was perplexed and didn't understand why Guan suddenly asked such a question. After a moment of consideration, she said, "The changes are naturally significant. Aren't all things in the world changing? Every place has its dark corners, and my disciples' experiences are just an exception, and won't affect my sense of belonging to the supreme sect." Guan glanced at her, a smile spreading across his face. Yi Qingxue thought Guan was satisfied with her answer, and a smile also appeared on her face. With a senior brother stepping forward, there would surely be hope for her disciple. The pressure that had enveloped her for several days dissipated, and she began to think about how to repay her senior brother. Half an hour later, Guan and his companion finally arrived at the Elder Hall in the sect's main city. This place was the power center of the supreme sect, and its influence was even greater than that of the sect master's mansion. Chapter 488. Incomprehensible Methods. Vice sect leader Ji Hantian also appeared, and he personally led Guan and Yi Qingxue to the conference hall. In the end, Guan sat in the seat of honor, with Yi Qingxue standing by his side, while the other elders stood as well. Seeing Guan with his eyes closed, they couldn't help but communicate secretly through sound transmission technique. Because everyone was using the sound transmission technique, the conference hall fell silent, and Yi Qingxue was extremely nervous, her body taut with tension. At this moment, she also worried that the situation might blow up too big. Could it be that because of her and her disciple, the supreme sect would crumble and disperse? She couldn't bear such an outcome. The Qin family was merely interested in her disciple's talent and didn't intend to harm her disciple. If she didn't approach Guen, her disciple would just lose his freedom. But if the supreme sect lost Guen, it would affect everyone in the supreme sect. Yi Qingxue began to blame herself, thinking she should have explained the situation clearly before coming. She looked at Guen, wanting to speak but hesitated. Little did she know, what she understood was not the truth. The Qin family not only wanted her disciple, they wanted his life. Time continued to pass. More and more elders arrived, and some changed their expressions when they saw Yi Qingxue, presumably guessing the reason. LV Batian also arrived. He had the best relationship with Guen and thus mustered the courage to ask why Guen had come. It's nothing much, just want to say a personal farewell to everyone. Guen said with closed eyes, and as soon as these words came out, everyone panicked and began to discourage him. Sword Venerable, is there something we have failed to do? Yes, Sword Venerable. The Supreme Sect can do without anyone but you. Who has offended you? Just say the word, and the Supreme Sect will definitely give you an explanation. Sword Venerable, don't scare us. Sword Venerable, where are you planning to go? The elders, no matter from which powerful family they came, even those from the Qin family, were thrown into disarray. To this day, most of the Elder Hall's members were newcomers. They had joined the Supreme Sect because of supporting Dao Sword Venerable. Without supporting Dao Sword Venerable, what was the Supreme Sect? Guen opened his eyes and looked at the faces in the hall. Most were unfamiliar, just like the current state of the Supreme Sect, which made him feel increasingly alienated. It wasn't just that old acquaintances were passing away. The sect's spirit was changing and seemed no different from other sects. The law of the jungle, where the strong are revered. Chivalry was not often mentioned by most people. Pursuing the celestial mandate had become everyone's goal. No one will trouble you for what's to come. With that, he walked off towards the streets, ready to stroll around the sect's main city. Yi Qingxue hurriedly bowed towards Guan's retreating figure. Yi Chong, his face covered in blood, struggled to open his eyes and said weakly, "Master, who is he?" Yi Qingxue fought back her excitement and whispered, "He is your ancestor's senior brother, your teacher's granduncle." Yi Chang's eyes widened. He lifted his head, trying to catch a glimpse of Guan's fading figure but could no longer see him. Guen disappeared into the crowd. Observing the bustling scenes along the way, he began to ponder the future of the Supreme Sect. This street would experience bustle and solitude, ebb and flow with the world's changes. As of the decision he made today, this street would turn into wilderness many years later. Chapter 489, Celestial Dao Reincarnation. 10 billion years lifespan. When Guen returned to the Third Medicine Valley, it was dusk, and he called an Exian to return with him to his loft. "Master, is there something you needed?" An Exian asked, curious. Guen seldom summoned her without a significant reason. Guen asked with a smile, "If I were to prepare to leave, what would you think?" Upon hearing this, Anzin's expression instantly turned serious. She knew her master was not joking. Over the years, she too had felt something was amiss. It was widely proclaimed in the world that all must believe in the heavenly Tao and pursue the celestial mandate. At first, she didn't feel much, but when she heard the disciples declaring that the fate of the world was predetermined by heaven, she sensed trouble. She still remembered what He Qing had said, that the heavenly Tao did not wish for her master to intervene. Although she wasn't sure if He Qing could represent the heavenly Tao, she couldn't help but think more about it. If master wishes to leave, then we will leave. Where to and when? An Exian asked, seemingly without any hesitation and even somewhat eagerly. Guen shook his head with a wry smile and asked, "Don't you have people or things you would hate to leave behind?" An Exian replied, "Although I am the major disciple of Medicine Valley and have close relationships with many disciples, I know where everything I have comes from. I only care about Master and my senior fellow disciple. She was gentle by nature, considerate in her interactions, but that didn't mean her heart was indecisive. Guan could hear the sincerity in her voice. His lips curled up as he said, "Since that is the case, I entrust you with a task. Select a suitable disciple from the Third Medicine Valley to take over as the Valley Master in the future. Of course, do not reveal my intentions for now." And Xin immediately agreed. Then, she began to inquire where Guan planned to go, but Guan did not answer her. For he was also hesitating. The universe was vast, with many worlds. It was worth considering whether to head to outer heaven or stay in the celestial spirit great world. Under the mystical star-studded sky, the celestial Tao golden core emitted endless light, illuminating the entire universe. Boom! A gust of wind rushed toward the young immortal emperor, causing his golden robe to billow intensely. He squinted, looking towards An Hao standing before him. 10 feet away, An Hao stood with his back to him. His body enveloped in golden flames, his long hair fluttering, radiating a soaring aura. This aura is almost catching up to that of celestial and earthly immortals. How has his strength increased so quickly? Something's not right. The young immortal emperor's eyes flickered with suspicion. The two brothers gazed into the distance, each harboring their own thoughts, no longer speaking. Not just them, in various places within the Third Medicine Valley, disciples were all looking in the same direction, worrying about the future of the Tai Tsong continent. Guan had not left for over a century. His prolonged absence had inevitably led to rumors within the Supreme Sect, many people worrying that the supporting Tao Sword Venerable had abandoned the Supreme Sect. The news even spread overseas, causing many spies from different sects to infiltrate the Tai Tsong continent and the Supreme Sect. The Supreme Sect seemed still stable, yet it felt as if it was a building about to collapse. Inside the tower, Guan watched the battle, observing the immortal dynasty resisting that Taoist Zhang Zizai immortal from outer heaven. In just an instant, the immortal dynasty's destiny was dispersed by that person, who crashed into the immortal dynasty's land, shattering the ground and engulfing the mountains and lands with fierce fire, turning the continent of the immortal dynasty into a hell in a blink. Guan could sense that this person was holding back, seemingly not wishing to destroy the celestial spirit great world itself, just wanting to crush the immortal dynasty. The immortal dynasty responded swiftly, quickly forming a great formation, the ancient immortal emperor taking the lead to combat the Taoist Zhang Zizai immortal, with other divine thought true immortals joining the battle. Taoist Zhang Zizai immortal was quite arrogant, continually provoking the immortal realm's immortals' Tao hearts, looking to grant them the greatest opportunity. Yet, Guan knew he was waiting for the celestial Tao golden core. The celestial Tao golden core was hidden in a mysterious space, isolated by celestial Tao destiny, making it impossible for Taoist Zhang Zizai immortal to locate it directly. Guan also saw that Yang immortal emperor had surpassed the free immortal. He was inside the celestial Tao golden core, and surprisingly, he did not need to cross the tribulation. His chi blood was merging with the celestial Tao golden core in a bizarre manner. What a spectacle this will be! Guan's lips curved upward. With a thought, an avatar appeared at the table and then vanished from the spot. The impending attack of Taoist Zhang Zizai immortal would undoubtedly bring a new round of calamities to the celestial spirit great world. Guan saw through his origin. This individual was connected to Battle Court, which meant Battle Court would eventually make a large-scale descent into the celestial spirit great world. He needed to choose his breakthrough site in advance in order to face Battle Court with greater confidence. Currently, the Battle Court's strongest cultivation level in the universe was the profound Yuan-free immortal realm. Her hair was blown about, her face expressing solemnity, her eyes flickering. Feeling this overwhelming pressure, images she had never seen before began to emerge in her mind. She saw a huge golden core burning with blazing flames. Inside the golden core stood a person, seemingly speaking to her. She strained to hear clearly but could not make out the words. What exactly is it? Zhu, she frowned, muttering to herself. After leaving the Taitsong continent, she had traveled extensively, encountering many opportunities. As her cultivation level grew stronger, her memories of her previous life began to resurface, and she gradually learned of her past live's identity, though she was still not fully adjusted to it. Chapter 491 Profound Star Immortal Monarch Taoist Zong Zizai Immortal's Great War left all living beings within great heaven and earth enveloped in panic. Even though the two Zong Zizai immortals headed to outer heaven to battle, the shock waves from their initial clash continued to wreak havoc upon the world. Great waves surged across the vast ocean, while the boundless plains were swept by raging winds, and atop the high mountains and snow-capped ridges, blizzards whirled. The common folk were fleeing, the celestial vault was roaring, and thunder echoed in waves. Inside the house, Guan predicted that the Taitsong continent would also be affected. However, it would not be a catastrophic strike, so he did not plan to intervene, deeming it a good opportunity for the inhabitants of the continent to be vigilant, to let them understand that the so-called heavenly Tao would not protect them, and if they wished to survive these turbulent years, they would have to rely on themselves. Guan closed his eyes, no longer observing the scenes of turmoil throughout the lands. As for the battle between Yang Immortal Emperor and that Zong Zizai Immortal, Guan had already foreseen the outcome. The battle court's desire to obtain the celestial Tao Golden Core was not so simple to achieve. Elsewhere, within the imperial palace of the Taitsong dynasty, Li Xiandao, dressed in his dragon robe, sat upon the dragon throne, his gaze fixed on the sky outside the palace, filled with flames. His sword-like eyebrows were deeply furrowed, and his expression looked troubled. He had already reached the Nirvana realm in his cultivation level, though his publicly known cultivation level was at the void-crossing realm. No one was aware of his true depth. Your Majesty, even existences from outer heaven seek to vie for the celestial mandate. Do you truly remain unmoved? Asked a Taoist clad in a grey robe, standing in the hall, holding a horsetail whisk, and wearing a slight smile, seemingly confident he had seen through Li Zuando's heart. Li Zuando's gaze fell upon him and said, "Can you truly bestow upon me the celestial mandate?" The grey-robed Taoist shook his head. "In this world, the only key that can grant your Majesty the celestial mandate is the theory of heaven. However, the Zhu Luo sword monarch is far too powerful. No one can wrest the celestial mandate from his hands. Nevertheless, I can guide your Majesty onto the heavenly Tao, allowing the Taitsong imperial dynasty to become an existence blessed by the heavenly Tao." Li Xiandao narrowed his eyes and asked, "Oh? How will you assist me, and what must I sacrifice in return?" The grey-robed Taoist smiled and said, "I can help your Majesty establish destiny, harmonize the fate of the imperial dynasty, and all you need to do is make the people believe in the heavenly Tao." Believe in the heavenly Tao? How so? Your Majesty only needs to have the people erect monuments and statues, and pay homage to the Profound Star Immortal Monarch. Profound Star Immortal Monarch? Li Xiandao raised an eyebrow, his expression turning playful as he asked with interest, "Is this immortal monarch one of the celestial Tao immortal gods?" The grey-robed Taoist smiled and said, "Exactly, by believing in him, they will be under his divine protection, and may even receive his power." Li Xiandao sneered, "Is that so? To convince me of his existence and to wager the fate of an entire nation, don't you think you should offer something more compelling?" The grey-robed Taoist did not panic. He stared at Li Xiandao and asked, "Your Majesty, do you wish for an immortal path ultimate treasure?" Upon hearing this, Li Zuando's expression shifted slightly. An immortal path ultimate treasure was naturally very appealing to him. His son Li Ya had relied on a pseudo-immortal Tao ultimate treasure to massively conquer enemies, and he too had envied it. The grey-robed Taoist raised his right hand, and a treasure sword intertwined with a golden dragon flew out from his palm, rapidly enlarging. "This is the Profound Star Emperor sword, even mightier than an immortal path ultimate treasure. With this sword, your Majesty would possess the power to prevail across the world. However, you must venerate the Profound Star Immortal Monarch, for the Emperor's sword will sense your heart." After saying this, the grey-robed Taoist lifted his hand, sending the Profound Star Emperor sword flying towards Li Xiandao. Snap! Li Xiandao grasped the Profound Star Emperor sword, and in that instant, his complexion changed as he felt an incomparable power coursing through him. This power made him feel capable of accomplishing many things. He looked at the Taoist in the grey robe and asked, There are so many imperial dynasties in the world, why choose me? The gray-robed Taoist laughed and said, It's very simple, because of the supporting Tao sword venerable. He doesn't belong to the heavenly Tao nor to the celestial spirit great world. He leads those around him away from the heavenly Tao, so I want to bring the Taitsong dynasty back to the heavenly Tao. Your Majesty needn't worry. The heavenly Tao won't make you confront the supporting Tao sword venerable, nor does it want to oppose him, as long as the supporting Tao sword venerable doesn't interfere with the affairs of the heavenly Tao. Hearing him mention the supporting Tao sword venerable, Li Xiandao couldn't help but have Guan's image appear before his eyes, and his gaze grew complicated. Knowing that Guan was the supporting Tao sword venerable, his emotions remained unsettled for a long time. He originally thought he was the best at concealing his identity, but Guan had opened his eyes to a whole new level. You successfully acquired 68 years of lifespan from the Longevity Spirit Flower, Tier 6. Your lifespan has broken through 100 billion years for the first time, unlocking the Lifespan Dojo feature. Lifespan Dojo. You can consume lifespan to establish a dojo, which has some effects of the lifespan barrier to prevent deductions and prying, but the dojo cannot gather nature's spiritual energy from outside its bounds, and it has defensive power comparable to your current realm. The Lifespan Dojo has no area limits, but the range will affect lifespan consumption. A special reminder that the dojo cannot move. Every 10,000 years, you may choose to establish a new dojo. Lifespan Dojo? Guan's eyes lit up. This was good. The lifespan barrier had been a huge help, but he couldn't always keep it up due to the enormous lifespan consumption. Luckily, now there was the Lifespan Dojo. Guan's face revealed joy, as he had finally broken through successfully. Continue to ascend. The lifespan barrier began to vibrate, and terrifying, vast reincarnation spiritual chi surged towards Guan. In an instant, the lotus sea outside began to sway. Guan used 8 billion years of lifespan, and only then his cultivation level rose from the late stage of the innate golden immortal realm to perfection. He still had 12 billion years of lifespan left, enough for the lifespan barrier to consume. Billowing reincarnation spiritual chi entered Guan's body, and he also felt the reincarnation rules drilling into his being. As more and more reincarnation rules accumulated inside him, numerous images of reincarnation appeared before his eyes, all of which pertained to karmic connections he had with others. He saw the reincarnations of figures like Yang Jian, Xiao Chuan, Lu Jiujia, and Yi Yan. He also saw the past lives of Yi Lan and Ji Xiaoyu. Too many images bombarded his vision, yet his expression remained unchanged, and it did not affect his Tao heart. He even began to comprehend the path of reincarnation through this experience. Countless gray lotuses swayed, as if the entire void was about to collapse, possessing a kind of chaotic beauty. Far away, the reincarnation mist churned more violently, as if unimaginable terrifying fierce beasts were about to devour everything. Guan suddenly sensed something and glanced towards the darkness. Indeed, there is a powerful presence. Is it a living spirit, or a lost soul? Or perhaps, does this place harbor a special existence beyond life and death? Guan wondered to himself, sensing an aura not inferior to that of the profound Yuan-free immortal. And to think, this was only the beginning of his breakthrough. Even more powerful entities might emerge later on. He dared not completely immerse himself in the breakthrough, keeping part of his mind outside the barrier, ready to move at a moment's notice. Under the mysterious starry sky, before the celestial Tao golden core, the young immortal emperor was sitting in meditation, his back to the celestial Tao golden core, with a mini sun floating behind him, burning with golden flames that made him appear akin to a sun god. The sun is the most perfect creation of the heavenly Tao. Any place bathed by the sun is considered a blessed land favored by the heavenly Tao, but there are also strong and weak suns, and Hao stood not far away, looking at the celestial Tao golden core and musing. The young immortal emperor did not open his eyes, but he asked, "How powerful is the sun the heavenly Tao has blessed you with?" And Hao replied, "I don't need the sun from the heavenly Tao. I want to create my own sun." The corners of the young immortal emperor's mouth curled up, and he no longer continued the conversation. After a while, the young immortal emperor suddenly felt something. His eyes snapped open suddenly, and even Enhao turned his head to look into the distance. The starry sky showed ripples, as if a lake's surface was disturbed, making the entire cosmos seem so illusory, like the moon reflected in the water, ready to shatter at any moment. What is this anomaly? Enhao asked with a frown. Although he had experienced the celestial Tao reincarnation, he had never seen such a phenomenon in this space before. This space consisted of the power of the heavenly Tao, independent of the celestial spirit great world. The young immortal emperor's brows also furrowed. Ever since he first entered this secret realm, 5 million years had passed, and he had never seen such an anomaly. In his eyes, this secret realm was even the safest place in the world. Now seeing the distortion in the starry sky, he felt an inexplicable panic. Could it be that an even more terrifying existence was about to arrive? He began to calculate with his fingers, but even he, having reached the level of the Taoist Zhongzhizai immortal, could not discern anything. Not only in this secret realm, but distortions also began to appear in the celestial vault in various places throughout the celestial spirit great world. The silent extinction domain in outer heaven was even more turbulent with spirit mist, oppressively dense. More and more locations began to experience spatial anomalies, thereby affecting the entire universe. Deep within the silent extinction domain, seated on a throne, Yi Tianji opened his eyes. He looked up and saw visible spatial distortions in the dark void. Is this disturbance in the path of reincarnation? Yi Tianji murmured to himself and looked in another direction. That way lay the world gate. He saw beneath the world gate a towering figure appearing, a powerful form gleaming with white light, as if representing supreme authority. The celestial spirit god.